I was ready like...
Oh.
I was ready like, 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Hello, everybody. I am Magician, but you can call me Aster. I am not late. I am not late. By like...
You're not late.
By like 15 minutes. Nobody noticed that, okay? Time to take some shrooms. That's right. In a fight. Yes, you're not late. Uh-huh.
In a fight? Oh.
Everyone else was simply early. Yes! I'm glad you get it. This is why you're my bot. Today we're gonna finish this game. My dogs are trying to eat my dinner. I have my dinner on like a tiny little table next to my desk, and they are trying to eat it. Both of my dogs are in the room right now.
Because they know that you're late, and they were like, okay, it's time to eat Run's food.
No, literally. Oh, both of them are so obnoxious. It's their dinner now. Yo, this was so good. I know, it's peak. We're gonna finish it today. Hold on, I'm gonna let my dogs out of my room because they're being very obnoxious. Yes, out you get.
Out.
Yes. Out you get. Alright.
You didn't even make a promo tweet, wow.
I'm sorry, I'm a fake streamer. First time joining a stream, your first video popped up in my recommended on this game, and I ended up finishing both of the videos that came before this one. Glad I could catch the third one. Yahoo! Heck yeah! Welcome in!
Anyways, can I make my joke?
Yeah, you can make your joke.
Fuck yeah. Silksong is in the air? Wrong! Toxic spores. Let's do this.
Peak!
I had this idea for the joke since yesterday.
Wrong! Toxic spores. Welcome in, and another one! Heidi being feisty? Yeah. Recently finished playing this myself, looking forward to seeing you finish it. Yeah! Alright!
Hell yeah.
Who needs bugs? We have mushrooms. Uh-huh. Okay, let's finish this! The third day.
Let's go!
Woo-woo! Ethel did her best to go about her morning, though she'd actually awoken in the early afternoon like she usually did. Wow, just like you!
Oh my god! She's just like me.
Can you start the stream on Twitch? Nah. This is voice acting, goes on YouTube. She hauled herself out of her bed with no small amount of effort, then padded to the bathroom. Once there, she cleaned her palm free of the dark sludge which just marked it. That's right! So last time, we went to the church again, we made out with the mushroom girl, and then we woke up the next morning with sludge on our hands, so she probably poisoned us. Yippee! Yippee!
God, I wish it would poison me via kissing too.
I mean, what? What? Who said that? Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. She cleaned, and she cleaned, and she cleaned. Her motion slow and regular and repetitive. The warm water cascading over her skin in rivulets. So sweet of her to think of us so deeply to poison us. I know! Ugh. The water turned a curious
romantic.
coppery color when it met the dark stain on her palm, but Ethel tried not to dwell on this too much. Like Lady Macbeth, she focused only on washing her hands, her motion slow and methodical. Ethel let her hands stay under the hot water tap for almost 3 full minutes, minutes during which her flesh turned pink, then began to burn. The water was hot enough to be scalding, but Ethel paid it little heed, average woman. She liked the pain. It helped drive her other, rather more pernicious thoughts from her mind. It stopped her thinking about what it was she'd coughed up earlier as she sat in her bedroom, and it stopped her thinking about how horribly tired she felt too. Oh, Jack, I did see what you said. No, I saw what you're thinking. It's just that the girl who kissed us is a mushroom, so she poisoned us.
Yeah.
Did I read this? I forgot. She coughed up
you read
earlier.
this.
Okay. Ethel eventually shut off the hot water with a hand which struggled initially to find purchase on the silvery tap. The skin of her hands was pink and swollen, taut and shiny. Ethel doubted that she'd be able to play the violin with hands like that, but maybe it didn't matter. Wasn't like she'd been playing the violin very much during the last few years anyway. It seemed strange that the violin had once been so important to her, when she'd been able to give it up so easily. Maybe she never cared about the violin as much as she thought. It'd just been a distraction, really. A means of filling the empty, aching chasm of her life. For a while, the violin had served its purpose. It had made Ethel happy. But that had been many years ago now. Ethel's university degree, likewise, had once given her joy. Or the semblance of joy, at least. But she took little pleasure in that now. She took little pleasure in most things. With her hands newly cleaned, Ethel dressed herself. She dressed herself slowly and clumsily, with hands which didn't want to obey her. Her skin was stretched tightly over her bones like the surface of a drum, and bending her fingers hurt. Ethel's arms, meanwhile, were aching. It took Ethel almost 2 minutes to pull her sweater over her head, and another 5 to fasten the clasp of her skirt. That's a long time.
That is a long time.
Eventually, however, Ethel was able to make herself presentable. Her hair was still messy, she'd run a brush through it only in the most perfunctory of ways, and she had bags beneath her eyes, but it would simply have to do.
Oh my god, she's just like me.
Dressed and ready to face the day, Ethel took a seat on the bed and retrieved her laptop. Thought that she might take a go at writing the introductory paragraph of her thesis, or failing that, the introductory sentence, but this was wishful thinking. Her thoughts were slow and sluggish, and she couldn't concentrate. She thought that working on her thesis might restore some normalcy to the day's proceedings, but why in the world would that work? Would have been abnormal, in fact, if she had made a start on her thesis because she was woefully behind on it. Writing so much as a single sentence would have been almost as shocking as an occurrence as coughing up all that bile had been. But Ethel wasn't going to think about that. She didn't want to think about her thesis either, and in any case, she couldn't think of it. It was starting to give her a headache. Ethel sat her laptop down, defeated. Then she began to ponder. What she really wanted to do was see the girl again. It seemed imperative all of a sudden that they speak. Tonight would be the last chance, after all, that they would have to discuss anything. This thought made Ethel feel nervous, but she tried to swallow it down. There was little sense in getting agitated now. She could save that for later, for when she actually saw the girl. For the present, she would try to relax. What else could she do? Ethel descended down the stairs, then took refuge in the living room as she had the day before. She had many more episodes of Supernatural to work through, and that was what she did. Ethel watched the TV, her eyes fixed to it sightlessly. She was only half paying attention, for 2 hours, until she was distracted by an uncomfortable rumbling in her stomach. It was only then that Ethel realized she hadn't eaten anything all day, and she'd not eaten much the day prior either. Ethel could only recall having a couple of toasties and then a few forkfuls of her mother's cherry pie, which she had inevitably binned. Was the pie the reason? Ethel wondered. She hadn't had much of an appetite lately. Might explain why she felt so queasy, too. Ethel's stomach felt empty, but she didn't have any particular desire to fill it. The thought of getting to her feet, then shuffling all the way to the kitchen to look through the fridge, was immensely unappealing. Ethel would far rather sit on the overstuffed sofa, which was comfortable, and watch Supernatural. But Ethel knew she had to eat something. It wasn't like her to skip meals. Typically, food was the one bright spot in her day, the sole thing she looked forward to. Now it felt more like a chore. Still, Ethel forced herself to stand. She was 21 now, which meant she had to try and marshal her body. She had to be a responsible adult, no matter how little she wished to encapsulate either of those roles. There was nobody else in the house in any event to look after her. She had to look after herself. Ethel walked to the kitchen with some degree of effort, then examined the contents of the fridge. She examined the freezer. She examined all of the cupboards, looking for stray tins of soup, leftovers maybe from shopping trips her parents had embarked on years prior, or packets of half-eaten pasta, but drew a blank. There was no food in the house, not unless one counted some boil-in-the-bag rice, a sticky jar of pickles, and several packets of pork scratchings, her father's favorite. Ethel wasn't the best at cooking, but even she could manage boil-in-the-bag rice. It was an option, but what was she supposed to eat the rice with? There was no curry sauce, and there weren't any vegetables either. Plain rice on its own didn't sound very appealing, and the less said about Jude's pork scratchings, the better. It seemed like she had no choice. She would have to make an emergency trip to the corner shop. It was fortunate that Oxbury did have a corner shop. The village was small, but it still boasted a place where its overwhelmingly elderly residents could buy bread and eggs and milk when needed. The shop was tiny, its inventory limited, but that was fine. Oxbury didn't need anything grander than that. The next half hour blocked out for her, Ethel decided to step out. She put her shoes on at the door, jamming her feet into her mud-caked trainers almost haphazardly, and set off. Can you play cooking companions? I've been considering it. Like I've had it on my list kind of passively for like a couple years now. I've never actually, like, I haven't looked much into it though.
It would be interesting to see you and Max play it.
It would be something that the both of us would play, right? Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I need to add that to my list of things to play with Mugman. Because I have a couple of things. I want to play cooking companions. I want to play some of Charon's games with Mugman too. Charon being,
oh my god, Charon's game.
Charon being a very well-loved yandere game developer. Not a yandev, but you know what I mean.
No.
Just not on control. Stop. Just not on controller, Aster. We've established that I can't play on controller, yada yada yada. I'm no good at it. I'm sorry, I'm too used to keyboard.
I saw that.
Stop.
I remember.
Cease! So
I'm here to be your demon.
Curious to wonder if the girl is real or a hallucination. I think she's real. We don't mention that name in this house.
She wants us pretty dead.
Ugh, I love women.
God, me too.
Wait, now you mentioned the promo tweet and now I feel bad, so I'm gonna put it out. Professional streamer. No, but like, Karen, I think I mentioned this on stream before, but Karen followed me on Twitter a couple months back.
I remember you mentioning it.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my god. So since then, I've been wanting to finish up. I've been wanting to play some of Karen's games. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my god. Yanderella.
Finishing up. I hope Ebihim is. I hope Ebby sees, like, I don't know if Ebby's ever watched any of my streams, actually. Ebby's following me, but
I have no fucking idea.
there you go. Watching real-time mods be mods.
Wahoo!
Any game X I put in the game. It's fine. Like, putting it in chat is fine too. It's just I'm less likely to remember it if I'm not familiar with it. Anyway. Like everything else in Oxbury, the corner shop wasn't far away. It was only an 8-minute walk, if that. Ethel had hoped that the fresh air might help brace her, restore some color to her cheeks, maybe. But she hadn't banked on it being so very cold or so very miserable. It wasn't cold enough to snow, thank goodness, but the temperature must have been in the single digits, perhaps 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. The sky overhead, meanwhile, was festooned with clouds. There was nothing particularly joyful about it. In fact, it was the exact opposite. Ethel shivered all the way to the corner shop, wishing she'd put on her coat. How could she have forgotten? She was so scatterbrained, her father sometimes said she'd forget her head if it wasn't attached to her neck. Ethel soon made it to the shop. The bell overhead jingled, but the boy behind the counter didn't raise his head to meet her. He was too busy scrolling through his phone. I kind of hate people like that. I don't know, if you're like in customer service, like you gotta react to the bell at least. I like how calm this stream is, thank you. So much for customer service. Ethel selected a few items. A frozen pizza, some frozen chips, a bottle of Pepsi, and brought them to the counter. Then she stood back and waited for the clerk to register her presence. This took a little longer than Ethel had hoped. The clerk really was ensconced in his phone, but a soft, "Excuse me," from Ethel made the boy lift his head. He met her gaze.
Can you imagine, like, the boy was, like, playing Uma Musume?
Shut the fuck up! Umabyai! 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 Then sheepishly he smiled. Go for it.
Alright. Oh, sorry about that. I was a little caught up. Let me get this rung up for you.
Thank you. The clerk
So have
scanned
you heard
Ethel's
of Uma
items.
Musume?
You ever heard of Umadachi? Umabyai! The clerk scanned
I was
Ethel's
trying
items.
to make my girl Haru Urara win.
We're getting off topic, it's okay. I got one of my friends into Uma Musume recently. Friend Mirai. Mirai's been on some of my streams before, so... But, I got Mirai into Uma Musume because there's an Uma coming out in a couple days that I think Mirai would like. And Mirai is finally like, oh my god, the career mode is so addicting. Like I see what y'all mean. Like this game is so fun.
One of us.
Mirai was like, yeah, this game is so fun except when you're playing Haru Urara, and I was like, you take that back.
Take that back.
Take that back.
I won the Yuri
right
finals.
I won the Yuri finals with her.
Back. Yeah.
I showed my screenshot, Mirai was like, that's photoshopped, and I was like, explode into a million pieces. The clerk scanned Ethel's items while she stood there, feeling awkward, and not quite knowing what to do with her arms. Her headache had yet to subside, though she'd taken some paracetamol earlier. Unfortunately for her, however, it didn't seem to be having the desired effect. Ethel's stomach, meanwhile, felt horribly heavy, as though she'd been stuffed full of newspapers. Ethel eyed the frozen pizza, a meat feast, ham, chicken, and pepperoni, with some trepidation. Welcome in, Y2K! She'd come to the corner shop for something to eat, but food now seemed the last thing she wanted. What could she eat when she'd be seeing the girl again? That was much, much more important than a meat feast pizza. What would she say when she saw her? What would she do? And perhaps, more pressingly, what would the girl do to her? This thought, of the girl's lips against her own, sent a small, secretive thrill of pleasure running through Ethel's stomach. She squirmed. Did the boy behind the counter, with his bright eyes and pierced ears, know what she was thinking? No, surely not. How could he? The boy bagged Ethel's purchases, the plastic carrier bag crinkling, then presented her the card reader with a cheery smile. The boy might have been wearing black, and he sported rather a lot of piercings, but he was rather personable. He reminded Ethel a bit of a puppy. He was quite sweet, really, in a boyish way, his face soft, heart-shaped, and devoid of even the slightest suggestion of facial hair. He looked even younger than Manny.
I wonder if, like, the boy there is, like, both
another MV character,
or maybe him is
right?
Yeah, another him a character. Yeah.
If we get a sprite or like a more physical description, maybe we'll be able to tell. He looked even younger than Manny, though Ethel presumed he was older. She was sure, in fact, that he was her age. He looked familiar. Hadn't they gone to the same primary school? It seemed inevitable if he and Ethel were the same age. There was only one primary school in all of Oxbury, unless his parents had sent him somewhere else. Ethel should have known what he was called, but she was drawing a blank. She'd always been bad with names, especially when it came to boys. Real. They all blended together with their short hair and their dirty, stubby fingernails. If they'd been former classmates, Ethel hoped the boy wouldn't try to embroil her in a yarn about the good old days. That would have been excruciating. Ethel fumbled in her pocket for her phone, which she tapped on the electronic reader. Her purchase approved, Ethel then took the bag from the counter. By this point, her palms were sweating. Her stomach, meanwhile, felt heavy. Mom spaghetti. Her volley scale is now ready, as though she'd eaten a cinder block, but that didn't make any sense. Why'd her stomach feel so heavy? She hadn't eaten anything all day. Ethel had gone to the shop to buy food to satisfy the empty aching inside her, but this emptiness had shrunk while the boy had been ringing up Ethel's purchases. Or maybe it had expanded. She felt dazed. She lurched uneasily towards the exit, feeling like an amphibian out of water. She could very well have been a wet, web-toed creature which did better underwater than it did on dry land. Her stomach was still churning. Her heart felt like a clenched fist. A sudden wave of nausea assailed her, making her gasp, and then... Who?
I think I know who it is.
Is it the guy?
Yeah, I think so.
A concerned voice drew Ethel out of her reverie, but it wasn't the boy from the corner shop calling after her as she made her anxious escape. Yeah, it was Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
Ethel's former teacher must have been going to the corner shop himself because he met Ethel's a stone throw away from the shop's illuminated exterior, and it was a good thing he had, too. Ethel'd been about to collapse when Mr. Brown caught her, his powerful hands pressed against her forearms. Mr. Brown looked at Ethel worriedly, his eyes narrowed. His gaze was discerning, and he soon sensed something was amiss. Gently, he rested a hand against Ethel's back, not low enough to make Ethel feel uneasy, and said,
Are you alright?
Oh, Ethel winced, Her vision was beginning to blur. The street looked alarmingly hazy. She might well have been viewing it through a thick film of fog. Her head hung, uncomfortably heavy, as she said, "I'm... alright, I think." Mr. Brown frowned. He didn't look convinced, and neither did he sound it, for that matter.
Your face is awfully pale, not to mention clammy. Do you have a temperature? You look feverish. It seems like you're having a trouble standing.
I'm alright, really. I think I just have a bit of a cold.
A cold?
Ethel nodded. I was out in the rain a couple of nights ago. It must have caught up to me.
Ah, yes, there is that. I would tell you to be more careful, but it's too late for that. I suppose it would be unreasonable of me to tell you to build a time machine. I can always let you come back to mine if you want to put your feet up. My home is closer than yours. It should spare you a bit of a walk, and I can put some tea on, maybe. It might make you feel better.
Oh no, it's alright. You don't need to go out of your way.
I'm a teacher. It's my job to go out of my way for my students.
I'm not your student, though.
You were once, and old habits are hard to break. I'll feel guilty in any case, letting you go off on your own in this state. What if you collapse?
I'm not that unwell.
I hope you're not, but would you let me be the judge of that? I might not be a doctor, but I am a primary school teacher. They might seem like a very different professions, but they have their share of similarities. They both involve looking after people.
Privately, Ethel thought that some doctors would dispute this claim. Ohayo, hisashiburi! Hisashiburi desu! In fact, she imagined a lot of surgeons would take offense to the assertion that corralling children was at all similar to performing triple bypasses. Mr. Brown sounded so earnest, however, that Ethel didn't want to argue with him. Not that she would have done anyway. She wasn't really the sort who argued. She wasn't like Manny, who could turn any co-op game he played into a whirlwind of racially motivated insults. Dear me. Ethel didn't want to rebuff Mr. Brown's kindness either, though she didn't relish the thought of going back to his home. She had no desire to see how her old primary school teacher lived, or where. She wasn't even sure if Mr. Brown's house was closer to the corner shop than hers, but she didn't want to question him. She presumed he knew what he was talking about. Mr. Brown was nothing if not reliable, and Ethel didn't feel up to walking. The mere act of holding the carrier bag with her Pepsi, diet of course, Lauren would be proud, and her frozen pizza, her mother would be less proud of that one, was making her upper arms ache. Dazed, Ethel nodded slowly.
Very good. I always knew you were a sensible girl.
Girl. Ethel winced. Was that still how Mr. Brown saw her? A foolish child? The thought rankled. She was already 21. こんにちは、私は赤いです。白いのお友達、よろしくお願いいたします。よろしく。君のチャンネル登録しました。ありがとうございます。これからも応援よろしくお願いいたします。すいません、日本語下手で。Discover the channel from Coffin. This is epic. Welcome in, Lucas. Lucas. I misread it. Sorry. She was old enough to drink, to smoke, to vote. She was old enough to drive, not that she could. She was old enough to have sex. I mean, I don't think there's an age limit for that, but I mean, not like that, but
Clip that.
Stop. I started going full on Eminem in Japanese. I mean, Japanese is just a really quickly spoken language. And she was old enough to get her heart broken. She wasn't a child anymore, though she often wished she was. I'm sorry, it's a strange sentence to me, okay?
What thing?
Old enough to have sex? I mean, I guess...
That is an odd...
Like...
That is quite odd.
I guess it changes, like, depending on where you are. Sad are the days without HEB grocery delivery. There's no HEB here. Thank you for the 2 down. Most languages are so much faster than English. Alright, all yours, sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, don't worry. Now let's go. We'll have you back in a jiffy.
Vaguely, Ethel wondered what Mr. Brown had come to the corner shop for himself. He hadn't gone inside, hadn't had an opportunity to purchase anything. He must have forgotten about his errands in an effort to look out for Ethel. Well, whatever he'd wanted couldn't have been that important.
Come on now.
Mr. Brown spoke reassuringly, giving Ethel's waist a squeeze.
It's alright. I've got you. Don't worry.
You know, I kind of trusted him, but like, this is making me suspicious. I'm sorry, what do you mean you're squeezing her waist?
I don't know, I like mixed.
Squeezing her waist? That's strange. And
her
then
waist? I thought it was her arm.
Her waist.
Oh!
That's weird, that's weird,
Okay.
that's weird!
That is weird, that is weird!
Also, this line in particular is raising red flags for me. Anyway. Under normal circumstances, Ethel would have been worried if an older man had been escorting her back to his home with his arm around her waist. Okay, so we're addressing it. Lauren and Jude had never been the most hands-on, but they had at least instilled Ethel with a sense of stranger danger in her childhood. Even to an outsider, this situation must have looked suspect. But these circumstances were anything but normal, and for once Ethel didn't worry. She didn't have the strength to worry for one thing, and for another, Mr. Brown wasn't so very unsettling. He taught Ethel when she'd been small. She'd been afraid of him as a young girl, that much was true, but she didn't think he was so very threatening now. Not when he looked just as concerned as, if not more than, she was. He really did seem to care. That was something Ethel could take solace in, at least. It was a cold sort of comfort when her head was aching and her limbs felt so numb. Insensible, almost. But it was better than being alone.
You're doing a good job. You can do this. Just a few more steps.
Ethel continued to walk, putting one clumsy, sluggish foot in front of the other, until, at long last, Mr. Brown had led her to their destination.
And here we are.
Mr. Brown spoke in an uncharacteristically jovial voice as he came to a halt outside a nondescript house uncannily alike to most of the houses in Oxbury, pebble-dashed, with 2 floors and a crooked chimney jutting out of the roof.
Home sweet home. There's nothing quite like it.
Mr. Brown unlatched the wooden gate which circled us properly one-handedly. He was still using his other arm to support Ethel, then stepped forwards. Ethel followed in his wake, feeling like an obedient pony being taken to the butt of water. Mr. Brown crossed the garden path, an array of geometric stones cut to algorithmic precision, in a manner which rather suited her former teacher, and eased Ethel onto the front step. Then he searched in his coat pocket for his keys, which he inserted into the lock. This was something of a production, given Mr. Brown was still supporting Ethel, but he was able to manage it with a surprising amount of dexterity for a man his age. Although perhaps this was not so very surprising after all. Mr. Brown wasn't so very old, not really, he was only in his late 50s. He looked a good deal healthier than Ethel was, and a good deal more energetic too. Wait, is this not her house? No, he proposed going to his because it was closer. I'm trying to debate. I'm trying to debate whether I'm like warming up to this idea or not, because like
I'm not warming up.
I don't know.
You.
Usually I trust my gut on these things, right? And my gut said from the start that he was fine. And like this is suspicious, but also I feel like that little passage earlier was just like kind of being like, no, it's okay, like kind of trying to like calm me down a little bit. The fact that he looks like
weird to me because like they just like talked again like 3 days ago, and like I don't know, it's just weird.
I'm trying to debate whether that's just strange or just like storytelling. I'm not sure. I really like, somebody said that like my trust in him is like a metronome. Like I kind of feel like that. The fact that he looks like he hasn't slept in days get me on my seat. No, we want our creepy people to be hot and mushroom girls, not old men.
True!
That's so funny, man. God is telling me he might be bad news, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway. He looked a good deal healthier than Ethel was, and a good deal more energetic, too. Mr. Brown guided Ethel inside his home, then paused to shut the door behind them. It wasn't long after Mr. Brown had shut the door when Sparky dashed into the hallway, his entrance heralded by a series of excitable barks. The dog must have been left to man the house in Mr. Brown's absence, though how well a dog could man anything was debatable. Sparky couldn't have been waiting for his errant master all that long, but his insistent barking was uncannily reminiscent of a nagging wife. "Where were you?" Sparky would have said if he could have talked, which, of course, he could not. "Oh, I've been waiting ages!" Mr. Brown must have thought similarly because he smiled wryly, then shook his head.
Alright. I know you miss me. You don't have to make such a production out of it, you daft mutt.
If Ethel hadn't been there, occupying so much of Mr. Brown's attention, maybe he would have bent to ruffle the top of Sparky's head. As it was, however, Mr. Brown was otherwise preoccupied, and he couldn't do that. Instead, he gave his dog, or daft mutt, rather, a gentle, affectionate nudge in the side with his shin. Sparky yipped at this, appreciatively perhaps, and Mr. Brown chuckled.
Well, I'm glad you're happy to see me. I could do without you making such a racket, though. What must the neighbors think?
Sparky yipped in response and wagged his tail, his dark eyes bright and eager. Whoa! Whoa, pretty house. Does he have a hole in his ceiling? What's going on there? A little messy. Whatever.
It is. What is the fuck? I don't get the name. But why is it on the floor there? Hello.
Oh, the broom?
Yeah, the broom. Why is the broom doing there?
That is an interesting spot for a broom.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown chuckled and led Ethel into the living room once the pair of them had divested of their shoes. Mr. Brown guided Ethel to an armchair, which she sank down in gratefully, relieved to finally be off her feet. Sparky followed the two of them into the living room, his tail trembling all the while. With wide eyes, he looked up at Ethel and cocked his head. Then he yipped. It was a yip which carried with it a question, one which was so unmistakable it transcended the barriers between the species. "Who," that yip said, "are you, and what are you doing here?" Ethel had half a mind to reply to the dog's query, but bit back her response. She didn't want to look completely insane, nattering away to a dog as though it had posed a genuine question. Fortunately for her, however, Mr. Brown seems to have understood Sparky's query, because he took it upon himself to answer.
Oh yes, I didn't tell you I'll be bringing a guest back, did I? This lassie here is Ethel. You know her, don't you, boy? Remember, you have met her before.
Sparky yipped his response in appreciation, and Mr. Brown smiled.
That's right. I'm sure you two will get on like a house on fire, but could you try to tone down all the barking? Ethel here has a headache. Isn't that right, Ethel?
Oh, I've felt better, I suppose.
I thought as much. You're as pale as anything. I do hope that Sparky is not bothering you.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Are you sure? I can always put him in one of the upstairs bedrooms if you like. I don't want him making a nuisance out of himself. And I know some people don't like dogs.
If you want to make a request, you have to super chat me a specific amount. Check the description. Ethel briefly contemplated Mr. Brown's offer, but the thought of Sparky being shut away upstairs for her sake made her feel guilty. She wasn't much of a dog person, but she didn't want to impose upon poor Sparky. This was his home, not hers. And he hadn't done anything wrong either, other than being a bit too excitable. Really, it's fine. I can deal with him.
Well, good. I'm glad. Just give me a nudge if he tries to jump up on you. He can be a bit over-friendly like that, especially since I don't have guests around all that often. Now, is there anything I can do for you? Would you like a cup of tea?
Oh, Ethel blinked, momentarily stumped. The question was a simple one, but Ethel was tired and achy and her head hurt, and she wasn't sure how to respond. Her stomach still felt tied in knots. She was unsure if she could stomach anything in her current state, not even liquid. But tea was rather inoffensive, wasn't it? You have Instagram? No. Maybe it would help soothe her, and if nothing else, it would let Mr. Brown feel like he was doing something useful. Oh, all right. Ethel eventually capitulated, more for Mr. Brown's sake than her own. I wouldn't mind a cup of tea. It might help.
Of course. I wiped that tip up for you in a what?
I think mo short for moment, which I haven't seen that before, but
I see.
that's what I'm assuming.
Of course. I whipped that tea up for you in a mo. Hang tight.
I will. Ethel's reply was half-hearted as Mr. Brown exited the living room, shuffling in his socks. Sparky looked between Ethel for a few moments, who was slumped in the armchair, and Mr. Brown's retreating trouser legs, before, with a decisive yip, he set off. He must have decided he'd rather spend more time with his master than the strange, frumpy girl, after all. Ethel might have been an amusing distraction for all of 5 seconds, but she couldn't compete with Mr. Brown. Nobody'd ever picked Ethel first, not during PE, nor when boys had been carousing the school's hallways looking for the girls to invite to prom. Why would Sparky be any different? With the absence of both its owners, it was obvious, based on the way Mr. Brown doted on him, that Sparky had free reign of the house. The living room felt staid and sad, oddly inhospitable. Ethel hadn't had a chance to properly examine her new surroundings, but now she did. There was nothing else to distract her. She turned her head this way and that, her eyes wide. Unfortunately for Ethel, however, Mr. Brown's living room did little to alleviate her sunken spirits. It was hopelessly drab and depressing, the carpet and the curtains uniformly dull. The cabinets which lined the walls, meanwhile, were dark oak, all full of ceramic figures. There was something sad about Mr. Brown's home. The color scheme matched his name so perfectly, it would have been funny were it not so sad. There was a strange smell, too, which lingered in the air. One of stagnation that the air freshener plugged into the wall could not quite hide. It was a curious sort of a smell, actually. It made Ethel think of the forest, of the damp and the decay. It made Ethel think of mold. Maybe the wooden joists in the walls had begun to rot. Wouldn't be so very surprising, what with how rainy England was. Ethel's parents' house had had mold problems too. It wasn't so very bad in the summer, but it always showed up in patchy stains that spread by the windowsills and the radiators when the winter rolled along. Wiping the walls clean of mold had become something of a tradition when the Christmas holidays rolled around. Jeez! Mr. Brown's house must have been afflicted with the same curse, just like all of the other homes in Oxbury. Ethel doubted that the houses in Australia, with its golden beaches and its sapphire surf, would be plagued with similar problems. Australia was far too sunny, not at all like England. God, what a dreary country it was. And what a dreary house this was! Mr. Brown wasn't so very old, but his home seemed to belong to a man at least 2 decades his senior. Ethel didn't like the interior decor. Try though she might, she couldn't get comfortable. Mr. Brown's home put her in mind rather too much of the old person's home in Marston that her great-uncle had stayed in after he'd taken a tumble and broken his hip bone. Ethel hadn't liked to visit him there, in that dun-brown communal home full of elderly men and women, but she hadn't had to pay him too many visits. He died only a few months after being admitted. Apparently, he'd succumbed to pneumonia. That was the official story, at least. Privately, however, Ethel did wonder whether being stuck in a home like that, with its gurgling radiators, brown curtains, and natty draught excluders, hadn't succeeded in carrying him off for good. Old people's homes were supposed to exist as places where the elderly went for succor, but Ethel couldn't imagine experiencing any modicum of comfort in such a place herself. It'd been much too depressing. Ethel had been depressed simply visiting there, and she'd only ever stayed for half an hour at a time. Mr. Brown's home reminded her of all her tragic visits to the old person's home 4 years prior. The color scheme of the living room was bad enough, but those china figures locked away behind their display case really sold the impression home. They looked like the sort of figures only a woman well into her 80s could care for, even when viewed from a distance. Such figures might have been fashionable once, but they seemed woefully outdated now. Ethel had unearthed similar figures in her childhood, during her weekends spent in car boot sales with her mother. These ornaments had always been grouped together in plastic boxes, all sold at a discount, $2.50 a pop, if that. Some of the more sorrowful ones, with missing fingers and hairline cracks running down their faces, had fetched for a quid or a 50 pence, or they'd been bundled together in humiliating deals. Buy one, get one free. Ethel wondered how much the figures in Mr. Brown's cabinet would sell for at a market. She couldn't imagine many people wanting to part with their hard-earned cash for a retinue of sailor boys whose blonde hair and blue eyes had begun to fade. There was a girl, too, sitting beneath a ceramic tree with a book on her lap, and beside her, a shepherdess with curls who was holding a crook, a lamb nuzzling her thigh. There was a boy with a fishing rod, and a girl holding a tray of what Ethel supposed were freshly baked cookies, and a clown who looked almost alarmingly realistic in his ceramic sorrow. Ethel busied herself trying to count the ornaments Mr. Brown had in that cabinet. Were there 20 of them? 30? When...
Have Eve's steel figures triggered your fancy,
Oh! Ethel jumped as she looked over at the doorway, her head swiveling like a sunflower's. She'd been so enraptured in the figures and in trying to count them, she hadn't heard Mr. Brown's approaching footsteps, or, oddly enough, Sparky's cheerful yips. Howdy, Brzezowski. That's an awesome intro. Welcome in, Encore. Her ex-teacher had returned from the kitchen while she'd been examining his spoils, however, and now he was approaching her, a tray clutched between his hands.
Those ornaments aren't really to my taste, if you're wondering. I'm not the one who bought them. They're Evie's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They're Evie's, though they belonged to her aunt first. She left them to us in her will after she died, and Evie was adamant that we take all the blessed things in. They were very important to her aunt, apparently, so important we simply couldn't leave them. I was less enthusiastic. I said there'll just be more things to dust, and who really needs so many knickknacks? But Evie talked me around. She was very good at doing that, was my Evie. I could never say no to her, not when she really wanted something.
Mr. Brown shook his head at this, a touch bemusedly, or so Ethel thought. Was he self-conscious, perhaps, that he'd let so much slip about his wife? Maybe he didn't think it was appropriate to talk at such a great length to a girl 30 years his junior, a girl who had once, more than a decade prior, been one of his students. Mr. Brown cleared his throat self-consciously and approached Ethel, the tray held steady in his hands.
Here you are. I've got you some tea. I hope it's to your taste, or at the very least, I hope it warms you up. Don't worry that you might have made yourself sick, going outside in the cold like that, especially when it's been raining so much lately. It can't be good for you. But if my mom's to be believed, that's nothing to be a good strong cup of tea can't fix. She was an awfully optimistic woman, my mother.
Oh, thank you. Ethel accepted the cup of tea from Mr. Brown, then nursed it in her hands, holding it to her chest like some sort of talisman. The mug was hot to the touch, and Ethel's fingertips tingled as she rested them against the curved, smooth ceramic. Steam rose from the meniscus of the tea, a fine, gauzy steam which smelled faintly fruity. As for the tea itself, it was a startlingly red color, which put Ethel in mind of poisonous berries, the small, round sort you found nestled among trees during the summer. Mug, you say? Mug?
Mug?
It had been kind of Mr. Brown to brew her a cup of tea, but Ethel didn't trust the liquid inside that mug. Mug?
That mug?
It was far too vivid, almost garishly so. It was red enough to be visceral, gore splashed on ceramic. Ethel wasn't sure all of a sudden if she could drink it. She felt nauseous. Fortunately, Mr. Brown wasn't the sort of over-attentive host who insisted that his guests drink all of their tea, every last drop. Maybe he didn't want to be overbearing. He might have been Ethel's teacher once, but he wasn't her teacher anymore. They'd both grown older since Ethel's primary school days, and there was very little to link them together. They weren't friends. They were hardly family friends. Mr. Brown himself might have felt awkward about inviting Ethel to his house. He must have been worrying that he'd overstepped some sort of boundary, because he didn't speak to Ethel, not for a few moments at least. Instead, he busied himself with sipping at his own tea which must have been too hot to drink comfortably. Ethel was certain his tea was too hot, in fact, because she saw Mr. Brown wince as he set his cup aside. Hope the stream goes well. Thank you very much, Royce. Are you heading out? I hope you have a good day. Is discussing the topic of visual novel games okay during streams of those types of games? Depends on how far removed from this subject matter it is, I guess. The mods will let you know. Had he scalded his tongue? A deep-rooted silence stretched between the pair as the seconds passed. A silence almost as intense as that which could be found in the depths of Oxbury's forest. Mr. Brown bent. He patted the top of Sparky's head for a few moments. His beloved dog had begun to nose about his feet, as the carriage clock on the mantelpiece ticked. That clock ticked and ticked and ticked, denoting every single second that passed, until Mr. Brown coughed. He cleared his throat. Then, looking up at Ethel, he said,
And how is the tea? Is it to your taste?
Ethel had yet to take a sip of her tea. It was still too hot. And anyway, she wasn't thirsty, but she nodded regardless. She didn't want to seem ungrateful.
Good. That's good. I'm glad. I think it's a bit too strong myself, but Evie liked it, so I suppose I've gotten into the habit of buying it. It isn't really to my taste, but I've got 2 boxes of the bloody stuff. I need to get through it somehow, which is why I palmed it off to you. I hope you don't mind too much?
Ethel shook her head mutely. She didn't mind, really, though she did think it sad, in a way, that this tea was yet another memento of Mr. Brown's recently deceased wife. A good portion of the house, in fact, seemed dedicated to the dearly departed Evie. The china ornaments on the shelves had all been hers, too. That and the floral curtains and the overstuffed cushions with the cross-stitch patterns. The dead woman's influence had seeped into every nook and cranny of the house, from the tea bags which proliferated in the kitchen cupboards to Sparky's mere presence. It was enough to make Ethel feel rather somber.
Don't feel obliged, though, to drink it. Not if you're not thirsty. I won't be put out. I'd rather think I forced it on you, just like I forced you to come here. I'm not sure if I gave you much of a say in the matter, but you did look rather unwell when I saw you outside the corner shop. I was worried about you. Do you feel better now, at least after sitting down for a while?
Ethel frowned, still clutching the mug of unsipped tea between her hands. The tea had cooled down a little by now, but she made no attempt to drink it. She hadn't felt particularly thirsty before, but now she knew the tea was a relic from the Mrs. Brown days. Consuming it would have felt akin to sacrilege. Why, it would not have been too many steps removed from consuming the dead woman's ashes. I do feel a bit better, yes. Thank you. You were very helpful.
I don't know if I'm very helpful, really, but I do my best. I can't leave people when they're in a bad state. I suppose, even if it does make me a bit of a busybody. That'll be all my years as a teacher coming through. I've developed a bit of a bad habit. But I didn't bring you here to talk about me. How are you, Ethel?
And now that was the question. How was she, really? Ethel was unaccustomed to people asking her how she felt, largely because nobody had ever seemed much to care, not even her parents. Maybe that was why Mr. Brown's innocent query had left her so shaken. Part of Ethel appreciated it, she supposed, but another part of her, a greater part maybe, felt uncomfortable about the attention. Welcome in, Elisar. She wasn't accustomed to it.
Ethel?
Mr. Brown prompted, his voice gentle.
If something's bothering you, you can tell me, you know. I don't bite. Might have been your teacher once, but that was a long time ago. I'm not going to start doling out detentions. Not that I ever gave the tensions back at Oxbury Primary. I'm not a strong believer in their effectiveness. Just... You have not been looking out all well. Your face is so pale even now. You aren't feeling sick, are you?
Ethel cast her mind back to the events earlier that day, recalling the coughing fit which had left her doubled over out of breath. She remembered, too, the strange black fluid which had stained her fingers. What had that been? Even now, she didn't know. If she'd been coughing up blood, though, surely she would have been suffering from other symptoms? Should she not be shivering, shaking? Shouldn't she have a fever? Ethel didn't feel particularly flushed, though. If anything, she felt uncomfortably, uncommonly cold. For all that Ethel knew, that strange black tar which had stained her hand could have been a hallucination. Love the content binge, coffin streams. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy some of my other stuff as well. Welcome, welcome. She had been very tired lately. She'd been worrying too much about her thesis. And then there was that girl at the church.
If nothing else, you look rather distracted. You might not be sick, but it's clear there's something on your mind. Would you care to share it with me? I don't wish to pry, but they do say that a trouble shared is a trouble halved.
Ethel pondered Mr. Brown's words for a few moments, letting the syllables percolate in her head like brewing coffee. She knew there was a degree of truth in what Mr. Brown was saying. Sharing one's problems with another could, in many cases, help to lighten the burden of trying to endure said issues on one's own, particularly if the other party was sufficiently receptive. For most of her childhood, and later in her teenage years, Ethel hadn't had anybody she could confide in. Her parents might have been supportive of her, but that was only in a nominal sense. Lauren and Jude had always been there for her, and they'd done their due diligence as parents, but they'd never really understood her. They simply hadn't had enough in common. Ethel had been incapable of turning to her family for advice, and neither had she possessed any friends whom she could confide in. She'd never had any friends. This had changed after she'd attended university and she'd met Clementine, but even their relationship had fallen apart. She didn't have anybody she could speak to. She was all alone. That had been the case, at least, and if it still held true, perhaps she could have felt enticed into divulging her problems with Mr. Brown. But it was not so now, not after meeting the girl. The girl was everything Ethel had ever wanted in a confidant. She was patient, understanding, well-meaning, and though Ethel felt a touch ashamed for considering this as a worthwhile criteria, she was very pretty. See you later, boys. Take care. Welcome in, Big Nanas. Hope you're having fun. I am. She was close, too, in age, to Ethel. Much closer than Mr. Brown. Ethel knew that Mr. Brown meant well in positing these questions to her, but how much could he help, really? They inhabited different spheres of existence. He was much too old to relate to her. He was even older than Ethel's parents. He was almost as old. He was almost as old as Ethel's grandparents, those on her mother's side at least. Ethel doubted he would understand her. She doubted it to such an extent, in fact, she did not want to try. How could she tell her old primary school teacher about her struggles with her thesis and her loss of interest in her area of academia? This is exactly what you should be telling a teacher, I think.
Yeah, that's like, what... like, I think you fully understand that, actually.
I think this is one of the best things you could talk about with a teacher, actually.
No, literally.
How could she tell him of her recent breakup with Clementine and how much that had hurt her? Also, not necessarily a teacher thing, but like, so many adults have been through this. This is not...
No, yeah.
How could she tell him that she felt like an unwanted alien in her own family? That she felt like she had nowhere to belong? And above all, she felt talentless and uninteresting and ugly alongside it. That's a bit heavy. How could she tell him about the girl
That is quite heavy.
Whom she'd known only for a couple of days? And how could she tell him how much she wanted her? Also too much. See, we're creating the boundaries here. How could she tell him how much she would miss her? She couldn't. It was impossible. Ethel turned these worries over in her mind like pebbles. Her fingers curled tightly around the ceramic mug Mr. Brown had given her. the mug from which she had yet to take a single sip. It was nice that Mr. Brown cared so much, but he didn't care in the right way. He didn't care in the way that Ethel wanted him to care. Ethel had nothing to say to him. There was nothing he could do for her. This is... oh man.
Nobody can fix him. Can't fix me. Only a mushroom girl can fix me, actually.
Hey, dude. Hey, it's my birthday next week. You want to come to my party? Everybody hated me. Like, is the vibe I'm getting. Like...
No, please.
She forced herself to smile, though she knew it couldn't have looked very convincing as she said, thank you for being so concerned, but I'm alright, really. There's nothing wrong with me.
Lie detector, brr. Like detector, brr. Are you certain about that, Ethel? The way you collapsed in the shop looks rather serious, if nothing else.
Oh, that's nothing, really. I've just not been sleeping well lately, so I've been a bit tired. It's nothing serious, though. You really don't need to worry about me.
You have been tired?
That's right. I'm used to my dormitory in Durham, so coming back to Oxbury feels a bit strange. I'm not used to it. It's hard to relax.
Ah, I see. Well, I can imagine your fatigue is being helped by your sudden fondness of late night walks. Perhaps you ought to try to have an early night.
I know I've been getting into bad habits. I'll try to take better care of myself, though. Thank you for checking on me. And thank you, really, for the tea. It's delicious. Ethel hadn't taken a single sip of her tea. At this point, she was certain it must have been stone cold. Mr. Brown must have noticed this. He had been looking at Ethel too intently not to call her bluff, but once again he didn't comment on it. Instead he smiled, then said,
It's no trouble at all. You have been doing me a favor, actually, if you drank that up, but you're quite welcome, of course.
Ethel felt a twinge of guilt in the face of Mr. Brown's reply, which was so very good-natured. Her guilt was a brief, fleeting thing, however, which didn't last. Why should she worry about lying to Mr. Brown? It wasn't like she owed him anything. He'd been nice to her, but his niceness had come in the form of a cup of tea she couldn't drink and a conversation she hadn't wanted to engage in. Ethel couldn't relate to him, and neither did she want to. Ethel had been 9 years old the last time they'd spent any real time with one another. She'd worn chunky butterfly clips in her hair back then, and she'd drawn horses in her copybooks, and she'd collected scented pens and stickers. She wasn't the same girl she'd once been. Guess by the end of the story, MC and her mushroom girlfriend are gonna be eating a mushroom pizza. Cannibalism.
Yes, cannibalism.
Morning, y'all. Good morning. Elias? Ellie? I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Mr. Brown didn't know a thing about her, or what she wanted, or how lonely she'd been. And Ethel hoped it would stay that way.
Me when I have an opportunity, like, listen,
She doesn't have to tell him everything, right? She doesn't have to tell him about, like, her, like
Hey, my family doesn't love me or whatever, like, you don't...
or
I don't
I
think
met
you
a
have to-
mushroom girl in the forest, and, like, I think I'm falling in love with her, but also she scares me a little
I think
bit.
she's pretty hot.
Like, listen, she doesn't have to go that far, but she totally could tell him about struggling with her thesis. And about feeling
that is a valid concern.
like that, like the thesis thing, the relationship thing. I think, like, low-key, like a little bit the family thing could probably, like, I think that would fly. I feel like she's making excuses not to reach for help. Exactly. She's definitely...
Yeah, exactly.
She's like, no, nobody can help me. I think Mr. Brown's trustworthy. Mr. Brown
I think it's because also she's been so used to, like, being alone that,
Yeah.
like, she even convinces herself that nobody can, like, help her or whatever.
If Mr. Brown is in his 50s, that would mean Ethel's grandparents would have been in their 30s when she was born, which is awfully young for that, to be honest. Might explain the issues her family has. That's a good point, actually. Because he's late 50s, right? He's like 58. So
Yeah, late 50s.
So, I mean, 30s for grandparents is pretty young. Like, you're kind of pushing it there.
Yeah, that is pretty young.
Which, I mean, we do know also that that Ethel's family, like, we know that her mom is like a TikTok star, and it
Yeah.
like usually it's
For fuck's sake.
usually it's young people who end up blowing up on TikTok. Like, you don't see a lot of, I don't know, you don't see more than like one-hit
You have
wonders.
TikTok, not me.
You don't see more than one-hit wonders with millennials a lot of the time. Then again, maybe I'm just not on the right side of TikTok. Anyway, it took Ethel only a few minutes to return home, a fact for which she was grateful. While growing up, she'd found Oxbury's diminutive size to be a negative. The village was so small it'd been stifling. Now, however, Ethel was glad for it. Made it easier for her to retreat from Mr. Brown's depressing living room and his equally depressing home and return to her own. I don't think it's that. I mean, I get it. But, like, this is so... Didn't Lauren have Ethel at 2021? That's pretty... Yeah, that is really young. It's not, like, really young, but that is pretty young. Ethel's home wasn't much better than Mr. Brown's. See? Ethel found it only marginally less miserable, but at least it wasn't so aggressively brown. Oh, so she has a problem with the color brown.
And her hair is like kind of brown, which is funny.
This woman is just like, ooh, the second I see my hair color on anything, die.
Ugh, I hate myself. I look at this fucking color.
The color brown. Hold on. Okay.
God, can you imagine, like, Ethel's mom, like, forced her to do, like, TikTok dances when she was a kid?
Stop. Do you think... Oh my god. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about, like, do you think Ethel, like, posted, like, videos of, like, Ethel as a kid or something? I don't think Ethel turned this house into, like, a content house. Or, like, one of those, like, family vloggers. Otherwise, Ethel definitely Ethel would have said something about it, but it did cross my mind. It's interesting also... I know. It's interesting how Ethel almost exclusively refers to her parents by first. That's true. Welcome back, Jack.
True.
Oh god, family vlogs? Ugh. Yeah, they're gross.
Anyway. Ethel had clutched her carrier bag with the frozen pizza and the Diet Pepsi in her right hand during her walk back. So tightly it left a red groove in her palms. I think she does that because she wants to be considered an adult and calling them father and mother might be too childish. I don't know. I mean, mom and dad isn't that childish. I mean, I don't know. Her palms,
it's not childish at all.
I don't think so anyway. Her palms ached and putting her food away in the freezer made her arms ache too. It wasn't until half an hour later that she set about making food. And once she had, she found she didn't much want it. The tomato base of the pizza was almost luridly red, and the cheese on top of it looked like pus. Ugh.
Ugh.
Ethel hadn't been very hungry before she set out, and what little appetite she might have possessed had disappeared altogether. How could she think of food at a time like this when she'd soon be seeing the girl?
Bruh.
She was much more important than trivial earthly affairs like eating. You need to eat!
Girl. Even the girl eats, like, I don't know you.
No, literally! Oh my god.
Even the girl eats and you're going to be her food.
You think she's gonna eat us?
Oh, please, that'll be so hot. I mean, what?
What?
Who said that? What?
Ethel ate as much of the pizza as she could, which wasn't very much, and tipped the leftovers in the bin. What a waste. If Lauren had been there, she would have tutted about the waste. But she wasn't there.
You're just Lauren, right?
I'm sorry.
You're just Lauren.
I mean,
you do have a TikTok. Oh my god.
Not that, but I have a British mom, and yeah, I'm not too dissimilar to her. There's a lot of times where like we'll be talking to family and we'll like speak in the unison.
Oh my god.
Anyway, she was in Australia with her father and her two brothers. Ethel was on her own. Ethel whiled away the rest of the evening and much of the night as best she could. She watched my Supernatural in the living room. God! This woman does nothing all day, every day. I'm sorry.
She's just like me.
This woman actually just sits around doing nothing. It's so funny, actually.
She's just like me for real.
Like, I'm sorry. It's so funny. She's just like, God, life is misery. I sit around at home not working on my thesis. and watching Supernatural, and then
For like the first
and then
time.
going to and going to church
Going to be
and
gay.
getting made out by a girl.
And then like wake up with a mysterious girl.
Make out with a mysterious girl, go back home, go to sleep, weird health issues in the morning at like 1 p.m. Anyway, watch
Repeat the
Supernatural.
God, I want her life.
I mean, her thesis is closing in on her. She watched
It's okay, you can always worry about it later.
the ultimate meat buxer. But that's a new term, I haven't seen that before. She watched my Supernatural in the living room, but she wasn't paying attention to the exploits of the Winchester brothers. They couldn't hold her attention. Like Kai and the Ice Queen. Ethel felt as though her heart had been embedded with a shard of cold, eternally unmelting ice. The shard of ice was Ethel's link to the girl. So long as it remained true, Ethel would never forget her. Oh my god. She didn't want to. I haven't seen the Ice Queen, so... When Ethel fancied enough time had passed, she finally stood. She stretched. Then, her heart all aflutter with trepidation, she set off.
Yeah, go and be gay. Go. Just go.
She thought about retrieving her anorak as she stood by the front door, just in case it rained. The sky did look overcast, the moon obscured with clouds. You better put on a damn jacket today, girl. Ethel didn't want to be caught up in yet another downpour. She dithered. But she eventually decided against wearing the anorak. You do this every time!
Oh my god!
I'm sorry, she's so... This is like peak girl failure. Like, oh my god.
It is!
I'm sorry, this girl can't do anything right.
Maybe Nora was right.
She's so pathetic. I'm sorry.
It's okay, I love a pathetic girl.
It was a big, bulky thing made of polyester, and it crackled when she walked, like some sort of giant sweet wrapper. It wasn't very fashionable either. Why are we worried about this? It was an unflattering, almost militaristic khaki green. Ethel never much cared about being fashionable before, but she cared now. She didn't want to look too foolish in front of the girl. Oh my god. You guys are such bullies. I'm sorry!
I'm not sorry.
How could you? I'm sorry. It all comes from a place of love. Also, thank you for the 11 months! 1 month off. Wow. Loves y'all, Ace Attorney and Dub Rose. Literally! Thank you for the 11 months. That's a long time. That's almost a year! Oh my god. See you next month. We'll have 1 year soon. Mean lesbians personified. Hey, we won't say it to her face. We love her.
I love bullying a pathetic girl.
It's okay.
Because
Rose,
I'm just as pathetic.
Rose bullies me as well, so it's okay. And I bully her.
I was bullying you for being late, so yeah.
Yeah.
I won't do it again.
It all comes from love, okay? I love this pathetic
That's
lesbian.
what she thinks.
She didn't want to look too foolish in front of the girl. If she laughed at her, part of her would have died. She's so funny, man.
She's so real.
Anoraks didn't exactly scream romantic moonlit rendezvous in any event. It was better to go without, even if she did get wet. Ethel can endure a little rain. My god. Ugh. She left the house, locking it behind her, and headed off into the night. She soon left Oxbury's cozy, cramped streets behind her, to the forest which fringed it. Ethel didn't hesitate before stepping foot amongst the trees. There was nothing to tie her to Oxbury, and nobody to tell her to stop. Nobody save herself. But why would she? She didn't want to stop. She wanted to see the girl again, which meant she had to press on.
She could like break a leg like in the forest, and she would be like, "Oh my god, that would be so embarrassing when I see the girl."
Ethel walked, and she walked, and she walked, her path lit by the moon and by Jude's old torch. Carefully, she navigated the forest, dodging a root here, a gorse bush there. The ground was uneven, and it was still muddy after the torrential rain from a few days prior. Once Ethel's foot twisted, but she was able to regain her balance. She wasn't gonna fall over face first before meeting the girl. She wouldn't let her stop.
Oh my god, there's no way.
she wanted to give the girl a better last impression of her than that. Eventually, Ethel escaped the tall trees which towered about her and stepped into the clearing. She's so down bad. I know. She's
God.
Oh my god, she's so cooked. Actually,
She's really
low key. Actually, I'm thinking about it now. She's okay. She's always been like a little bit pathetic, right? But she's being like has she always been this pathetic?
Extra pathetic.
Like, her saying shit like, oh, I don't need to eat. Like, what's the importance of mortal things like eating in the face of the mushroom girl? And I'm thinking about it, and it's like...
Of the girl.
I'm like, this kind of started, like this, like, incredibly down horrendous kind of started when, after she coughed up the sludge.
Yeah, yeah.
Or whatever. I'm wondering if it's like, I'm wondering if she's, it'd be really funny if this was just the way that she is, but if this is also like a result of,
it would be really funny.
But also I'm thinking it could be a result of like mushroom hypnosis or whatever. Because I mean, like, you can imagine what the mushroom girl's goal is. It's probably to, like, you know, eat her. So we need her to, like, isolate herself and not make smart decisions. Yeah, I figure the spores she's ingesting are making her more and more attracted to the girl. Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
That makes sense. Although, like, can you imagine she was like this with Clementine?
If she was like this in Clementine, I kind of get it. She could see St. Catherine's in front of her, solidly immovable, as it had been during the previous 2 nights when she'd come across the aged building. St. Catherine's looked at us as it always had, coated in the inky darkness of the night. But there was something different about the church that night, something which made Ethel pause. The light wasn't on in the window, and the door was tightly closed. Ethel couldn't see that hairline crack in the church's entrance which had become so very familiar to her, nor the candlelight which spilled out from it. Instead, the church was sealed shut, airtight, like an Egyptian sarcophagus of eras gone by. The church seemed hollowed out and empty, a dull, dismal shadow of its former self. Ethel approached the church hesitantly, her gait as slow and uncertain as a newborn deer's. Was the girl really there? Ethel wanted to believe so. The girl had said that she'd be waiting for her, but she couldn't detect any traces of life about the old stone building. The nighttime air was cold, yes, but there was no breeze to it. It was as quiet as the grave. It seemed unlikely that the girl would be shut up inside the church, which now felt so very devoid of life, still singing her alluring siren song. Ethel couldn't imagine it. She was having a hard time picturing the girl at all, now that it'd been an almost full 24 hours since she'd last seen her. What did the girl look like? What did she sound like? Ethel was sure she'd been beautiful, but she was sure of this only in a very vague, half-formed sense. Too vague and half-formed to be sure at all. She thought the girl perfect, but perfection didn't exist. Not even Shania, for all of her pretensions to the contrary, had been perfect. How could the girl be otherwise? She was just, for all she'd allured Ethel, an ordinary girl. Or was she?
Dun-dun-dun.
Dun-dun-dun. Ethel approached the church slowly, her soles crunching the tall, unkempt grass underfoot. St. Catherine's was a small, squat church, but its shadow soon swallowed her, drowning Ethel in a deep, inky darkness. Ethel reached out, her right arm trembling. She pressed her palm against the door, which seemed curiously impenetrable in the dark, the wood too firm and thick to give way beneath her fingers. Then, she pushed. The church's wooden doors dwarfed Ethel to such a degree, she was almost surprised when they gave way beneath her palms. The door opened with a low, guttural creaking which swelled in the silence. It sounded oddly alive, like a groaning monster hauled from the bottom of some deep, dark abyss. Maybe it was some sort of an omen. Maybe you should turn back now. Maybe you should go home and forget that you ever met this mushroom girl.
Maybe you should keep jamming at this banger. No, like seriously, I'm cat jamming with this
No, this music is
musical.
pretty good.
Ethel couldn't help but recall Mr. Brown's warnings from a few days prior. His warnings about the mysterious missing girl.
Are we getting flashback?
I wouldn't want you getting lost. And you do know what happened to the Lane girl, don't you?
I was gonna drink some water.
Of course Ethel remembered the Delaney girl. Her mother had talked about her incessantly after her disappearance. But nothing like that was going to happen to Ethel. She wasn't interesting enough to be abducted, and her life was much too mundane. Everything about her was almost painfully ordinary. Ethel had always thought she was ordinary at least, but the girl didn't seem to think so. She'd always been affectionate. But did she really mean it?
Now we gotta bag the mushroom baddie.
Ethel frowned as she gave
yeah.
the doors to the church another push. Then she stepped inside. She was eager to see the girl again, to speak to her, to ask her whether she'd text her when she left Oxbury, and if she'd still remember her. But the interior of St. Catherine's was pitch black. St. Catherine's in the stillness of the night was dark, the air cool. It felt a bit like stepping foot inside a vaulted, vast-ceilinged crypt. Which Ethel supposed it was. That was one of the functions of a church, past being a place of worship. The flagstones which Ethel walked upon were built over a veritable mountain of corpses. This place was a living, breathing boneyard. People thought the famous Sedlick ossuary was grim, decorated as it was in ghastly, grinning skulls, but at least it was honest about what it was. It had no pretenses. It was earnest. But this was something that people didn't always appreciate, particularly not when the topic of death was involved. Ethel inhaled. In the air, she could smell several centuries' worth of death. Then she turned. It was obvious that the girl wasn't there. There was no point hanging around. Maybe all this, their midnight meetings, had been some sort of cruel practical joke. Had that kiss, too, all been a piece of trickery? Perhaps the girl was there after all, hiding in the bushes, snickering, as the door of the church slammed shut behind Ethel. Ethel was unsure whether this idea appealed more than the alternative, but the girl didn't care at all. Being treated as an object of mockery wasn't nice, but it was better than being ignored. If the girl had set this up as a means of hurting Ethel's feelings, then she had succeeded. But that would at least mean that she cared about Ethel's feelings enough to want to hurt them.
What? That's
quite a leap.
No, literally.
This girl and her mental gymnastics.
No, literally. Like, oh my god, we need you like a healthy girlfriend, girl.
No,
and, like,
literally.
some friends, I think.
It was stone-cold apathy in the end, which would have really undone Ethel. Ethel stood mutely beneath the moonlight for a few moments, nibbling on a hangnail. There was no point waiting around if the girl wasn't going to appear. It was cold and it was late, and the night sky overhead was overcast. Maybe it'd rain again. Ethel didn't want to get caught up in a downpour. She should leave. There was nothing waiting for her here, not without the girl. But now Ethel was beginning to worry she might have arrived too late. Perhaps the girl had arrived after all and she'd already departed. They'd never agreed upon a fixed time for their meeting. The girl had been maddeningly vague about it, as she was about everything. Part of Ethel enjoyed this vagueness. It gave their meetings a greater aura of mystery, but it had made arranging things difficult. With no fixed time to work with, Ethel didn't know who to blame for what had occurred. Had she been too early? Had she been too late? Had the girl come and gone? Or had she never come at all? Ethel continued to stand there, withering, worrying at her hangnail. She bit it hard until the nail splintered between her teeth. She bit the nail too close to the quick, in fact, and her mouth soon filled with the tang of copper. Her tongue was tingling. Christ. Ethel sighed, invoking the name of the Holy Sun. Ethel couldn't think of a more appropriate place to do so as she did. What was she doing, loitering around the church so late at night? 10 minutes must have passed, if not more. She was being a fool. Why'd she think the girl would appear? Should have learned her lesson already with Clementine. Hope only ever seemed to give way to despair. Ethel squared her shoulders. Then she set off. She'd put the girl behind her, pretend this had never happened. That would be for the best if it would spare her fragile ego. Ethel didn't want to be taken for a fool. Not when she felt foolish so frequently regardless. She stalked off, malforming and misshaping the grass beneath her soles when...
Oh hey. Hi, hello there, stranger. Where do you think you are going?
How goes it? Hello, Mugman! It's
Oh my
going.
God, Max!
You better stick around, huh? Huh? It's Yuri, so it's peak. I just joined. Welcome in, Astra Lily. Didn't know about this stream. You gotta turn on notifications in the Discord. I will be sticking around. Wahoo! Oh,
Let's go!
Ethel gasped in alarm as a sudden, unexpected darkness descended, one even deeper than the darkness which had previously shrouded her. At least that darkness had been alleviated, if only a little, by the moonlight. This darkness, however, was far more complete. Because guess who's getting a whole ass new modem tomorrow? Better internet? Oh, yippee!
Let's go!
Yeah, so deserved.
No, literally, I'm so tired of your internet.
No, for real. I will blast Ode to Joy in your honor. She might very well have poured ink into her eyeballs. Ethel can see. For a few moments, she forgot how to think.
No, why have you gone all stiff? Don't tell me I've scared you.
But a familiar voice, a scant few centimeters away from her ear, restored Ethel's senses. She recognized that voice. It belonged to somebody she knew. Not well, perhaps, but well enough. It was the girl. Who else would it have been? Ethel couldn't think of many other people in Oxbury mad enough to wander this far into the woods, all the way to St. Catherine's at this time of night, not without a prior appointment. Why had she been so anxious? The girl drew her hands away from Ethel's eyes, then stepped back. She looked just like she always did. Her dress simple, her hair short and dark. Ethel thought the girl's hair, which was dark as a raven's feathers, was pretty when viewed in the flickering candlelight of the church. Outdoors, however, it seemed almost too dark, as though she and the shadows were one undulating, amorphous blob. The girl's skin, meanwhile, seemed too pale, her dress oddly flimsy given how late it was. Wasn't she cold? Ethel examined the girl questioningly. Though Ethel knew her, she suddenly seemed like a stranger. Maybe it was because she'd never seen the girl outside the church before. Ethel must have begun to link the girl and St. Catherine's together, coupling them until they were one symbiotic organism. One could not function without the other. The girl, without the backdrop of St. Catherine's nave, might very well have been missing a limb, or an eye, or her mouth. The girl's lips, however, were very much present, and they were curved upwards into a familiar crescent moon smile.
Are you looking for me? If so, that's very sweet.
Oh, yes. I thought maybe I was too late or too early, or... I don't know. I thought...
They wouldn't show up at all?
Ethel fell silent. Anxiously, she gnawed the inside of her cheek. This wasn't necessarily something she wanted to admit to. It made her feel uncomfortably vulnerable, but she nodded all the same. She couldn't hide anything from the girl. The girl's voice might have been light, but her eyes were sharper than knives.
Well, you don't need to worry about that. I'll never stand you up. Do you think I'll be so cruel?
No, I don't. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant...
You didn't think that you were worth fighting for?
Well, maybe?
Jeez, I thought that was probably the case. Ah, you silly thing. I wish you had more self-confidence.
That might be quite the big wish.
I did get that feeling, yes. You shouldn't be so down on yourself, though. You're a nice girl. No decent person would ever leave you in the dirt.
Was that so? Ethel sighed. The girl ought to try telling that to Clementine.
I would have come earlier, actually, but I got a little bit caught up.
caught up?
I was doing things.
What things?
Just things. It doesn't matter now, though. I've got everything under control, which means we can spend a lot of which means we can spend a lot of time together, provided you want to, of course.
Well, of course I want to. Ethel replied quickly, perhaps too quickly. Then she winced. Why'd she have to sound so eager? That was so uncool. And not Ethel supposed that she'd ever been cool. Do people even use the word cool anymore? Perhaps that was also dated, just like everything else about Ethel. Her taste in TV shows, her favorite music, and her fashion sense. What fashion sense? Ethel wondered if the girl would judge her for her blatant enthusiasm. Wasn't it a bit excessive? But...
Good, I'm glad. I don't know about you, but I've been looking forward to this all day.
You have?
Yeah, you're the only person around here I can really talk. Or at least, you're the only person I think is interesting enough to talk to. I don't want to waste my time with anybody else, but you. You're special.
Special.
Yep, I said so it must be true. You can trust me.
The girl giggled, and after a pause, Ethel found herself giggling too. There was something infectious about the girl's laughter. She really couldn't help herself.
I'm looking forward to having a girly chat, just the two of us. But I don't think I want to stay in St. Catherine's tonight. Not when it's my last day here. I think I'd rather go for a walk. That is, if you don't mind.
Oh, Ethel blinked. She was surprised to find that, for some inexplicable reason, that she did mind this. She minded quite a lot, actually. The word stranger danger flickered, unbidden, inside her head. Once more, she remembered the missing Delaney girl, who had vanished into the woods without a trace. But surely she was being foolish.
Yeah, surely.
It
There's nothing wrong.
seemed unlikely that the girl
Sorry,
meant to lead
TMI.
Ethel into the woods to dismember her. She didn't look like a serial killer, and neither did she act like one. She did not seem to be in possession either of a saw or of any other potentially lethal instruments with sharp, serrated edges. Ethel was just being paranoid. Why was she such a coward? Oh my
Oh
god,
my
she's
God.
so cooked.
We are cooked! Chad, we're
alright.
getting cooked.
I don't mind.
You don't mind much, do you?
The girl tittered, and Ethel got the feeling, though she tried to squash it, that the girl was making fun of her.
I thought you'd say that, but it's good to get some clarification regardless. I wouldn't want to drag you into anything you didn't want. Now, shall we get going?
The girl held out her hand, her stark white fingers extended in the dark for Ethel to take.
I'd like to show you something.
Oh, Ethel eyed the girl's hand uneasily. It hung in the air suspended, much like the moon which hovered over their heads, above the slate roof of St. Catherine's. All of a sudden, the girl's hand seemed full of meaning, so much so that Ethel shivered to behold it. A cool breeze blew about her, capturing the ends of her plaits so they shifted. The cold was twining up Ethel's ankles. It was brushing against her knees, the insides of her thighs. She couldn't stop shaking. The girl, however, was resolute, so immovable she could have been carved out of stone, her eyes obsidian. Though the breeze stirred her hair, it didn't seem to disturb her. Her hand didn't waver. The expression in her eyes, which were very dark, was pointed, almost unassailable. Ethel stared into those irises, and she did. She felt herself trembling. When she swallowed, she could taste the cold, crisp air on her tongue. That, alongside the undercurrent of something unpleasantly fussy. What was it? Leaf mold, maybe? Moss? Ethel wasn't sure, but...
Hello? Didn't you hear me? I thought I was talking loudly enough, even if it is pretty windy. I said...
The girl cleared her throat with an audible one which sounded staged, then said, her palm still suspended in the air.
Won't you come with me? There's something I would like to show you. Something that's very important to me. Unless you're afraid I might lead you astray.
Oh, no, I'm not afraid. I'll come with you. Ethel crossed the churchyard, grass and stray wintry leaves crunching underfoot. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Then took the girl's hand. The girl's fingers enclosed about hers, and Ethel gasped. She was struck, once again, as she'd been in the church, by how very cold her palm was. There was something unnatural about it. Was that normal?
Good. I knew I could count on you. You're such a good girl, Ethel. Now, come on. Let's go. I have a lot I would like to show you. If you think you can keep up to this.
Oh!
It is without any
Oh my
further
god, thumbnail!
Oh my god, everybody look. It's the thumbnail.
Oh my god!
Oh, jeez,
Can I-
she's so...
Can I say it?
You can say it.
That ass, though. Like, look at that ass.
That is actually... Wait! I see what you mean! Whoa!
Right?
Damn!
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 Does the queen have that yacht?
Down with the queen! Wait!
Does the queen have that yacht?
Shut the fuck.
Anyway,
It was without any further preamble that the girl turned, her dark hair fluttering in her wake as she walked. My compliment for the stream is, I love watching your channel. Thank you so much!
also, all of us were a little too focused on other things to know. She has mushrooms growing out of her hand. Knock,
Sexy.
knock.
Ooh, English and Japanese only, please. I don't speak any Korean. The girl might have been slender, less like a flesh and blood ballerina, and more like a fragile china figure of one. But her grip around Ethel's hand was surprisingly firm.
Girl on command, if you get my drift. I do not, but I sense it. Who doesn't have mushrooms growing out of their hands at the end of the day? Oh wait, she does. Y'all were way too focused on everything else. Hello? How many trees? What color are her eyes?
Blue.
Her fingers pressed against Ethel's skin, hard and uncompromising like steel, and Ethel gasped.
Next question.
She hadn't realized that the girl was so very strong. There was something a touch unnatural about the sheer force the girl was capable of exuding with that slight frame of hers. But a touch of surreality had tinged their initial encounter from the very beginning, when Ethel had found her singing in the church. Their meeting had felt like something from a dream. Maybe this was a fantasy after all. The way the girl moved, nimbly navigating the trees which surrounded them, certainly felt like something from a dream. She made no noise, like a minnow swimming through a stream. Ethel, meanwhile, was far less coordinated. She was clumsy, and her feet made no shortage of noise as they trampled the grass and the leaves in her wake. Once she almost stumbled, but the girl's grip on her hand didn't waver. The further into the forest they delved, the firmer her grip upon Ethel's hand seemed to become. The trepidation that Ethel had first felt when the girl had extended out her hand doubled, humming like a second heartbeat in the base of her throat. She could taste the earth when she swallowed. It was so potent she felt as though she was choking on it. Her mouth might as well have been stopped up with soil. They kept walking, on and on and on, and as the minutes elapsed, or had it been hours, Ethel's feet began to sting. Her shoes were beginning to feel like a constricting prison, one which squeezed her without mercy. Her hand, meanwhile, was aching. Why was the girl gripping it so very tightly? Ethel had half a mind to ask the girl to relinquish her grip, if only a little, to assuage her aches and pains. But, though these queries danced upon her lips, she didn't express them. It seemed doubtful that the girl would reply to her, And Ethel was also beginning to doubt the girl's intentions. It took you long enough. Her fingers curled around Ethel's, tightly and possessively. And as they did, Ethel was struck with a discomforting sense of wrongness. There was something strange she was only now beginning to realize with the girl's hand. Her flesh was yielding. So much so, Ethel had to wonder whether there existed any bones at all within that hand of hers. If she didn't have bones, however, then how could she have gripped her? And so strongly, too. There was something strange about the girl's touch. There was something strange about the girl, full stop. This night had been nothing other than bizarre, but Ethel's surprises had yet to cease. There were more nightmares to uncover, nightmares which Ethel had never before considered. Her imagination simply wasn't good enough. It wasn't enough to preempt the sheer shock she received when the girl came to a halt, then glanced back at her. She observed Ethel, their hands still entwined like a couple of lovers out on a midnight stroll.
Ooh. Oh, now, isn't this relaxing? I found this part of the forest quite pretty. Don't you agree?
But there was nothing very lovely about Ethel's companion.
Oh, this is awesome! Wow! Oh, this is an incredible design.
Oh, fuck yeah.
The girl is
Oh, I'm so in
smooth.
love, actually.
No, same. Ooh, weak in the knees.
The girl's smooth skin, which Ethel had once envied, had altered dramatically during their walk through the woods. It was no longer as fair as it had once been, and neither was it so very clear. The girl's skin seemed to have tarnished, her flesh stripping away like wallpaper in an old house to reveal not bone, but a cluster of white growths which protruded from her skin. They were mushrooms. The girl's eyes, which had always been dark, now looked oddly bright, halogen lamps which flickered in the gloom. The girl still possessed the features one needed to be recognized as a Homo sapien. 2 arms and 2 legs, a head, the suggestion of a nose, and a dark, pitted cavern of a mouth. But she looked like no person Ethel had ever seen before. She didn't even look like any monsters Ethel had seen on the television screen, crafted with stage makeup and cleverly concealed prosthetics. She looked like something from a nightmare, so removed from Ethel's comprehension that she didn't know how to define her. Ethel's thoughts seemed to have ground, and the moment the girl turned to glance at her, to a halt, slowing then stuttering. The girl must have noticed Ethel's disorientation and the distress which accompanied it, but it didn't seem to bother her. Maybe she'd been expecting it. The girl smiled, a dark, demonic sort of a smile which rivaled the blackness of the night which hung about them. The girl's dark hair had once been luxurious, but now it looked strangely brittle, like straw. Her body seemed to be undulating ever so faintly, as if animated by some unholy energy. More mushrooms were sprouting from the side of her neck, her collarbone, her right cheek. There were mushrooms in her hair, garlands of them, like a crown of flowers. There were mushrooms, some white and ghostly, others dun brown, sprouting in the crevices of her arms and between the tips of her fingers. The mushrooms were swallowing her, flourishing as they always did on the carcasses of old, dry, dead things. The girl herself, with her straw-like hair and her patchy, discolored skin, might very well have been a dead thing herself. The way she spoke was, certainly, dry and rasping, as though she were enunciating through a mouthful of gravel. You... Ethel stared at the girl, at the creature in front of her which had once been a girl, with wide, frantic eyes. What are you?
Do you really have to ask? I'm not so very different, you know, from the girl you were talking to before. We're still the same person. But maybe person is the wrong word to describe me.
Slowly, the girl laughed. It was an awful sound, dry and scraping, like a tree branch drumming against a window pane. The sound sent shivers down Ethel's spine, shivers she couldn't control. It was cold outside, but the girl's voice was even icier.
Don't look so frightened. You have nothing to worry about. I'm not going to hurt you. Have I ever done anything to upset you before?
Mutely, Ethel shook her head. She wasn't sure what to say in the face of this nightmare. There were no words.
There, you see? There's no need to fret. If anything, you should be flattered that you have been able to see us like this. We don't show ourselves in this form to many people. Only people we trust receive this privilege. That means you're special.
I don't... Ethel swallowed. When she did, she could taste the cool air in the back of her throat. As frightening as the girl looked now with her aqueous eyes. But were they eyes? And the mushrooms, like barnacles, sprouting from her greenish-bluish skin. The compliments still made Ethel's heart flutter. The pathetic, pitiful part of her that had always yearned for acceptance still appreciated the girl's kind words. But another part of her shrunk away from them, shaking. I don't understand. You said that you're the same as always.
That's correct.
But you're not human, are you? Ethel winced the moment this query left her lips. It sounded so stupid, hackneyed beyond belief. It was the sort of thing she'd hear in Supernatural. Never had she imagined that she might end up saying such a corny line. How in the world had this happened? Ethel's face began to flush, despite the cold from embarrassment. It seemed like she would never be cool. She simply didn't have it in her. She was too large, too unwieldy, too awkward.
How very astute.
But the girl didn't seem to mind that. She giggled, the sound oddly mulchy, muffled by the mushrooms which were now beginning to push their way out of her mouth.
You're right. We're not a human, or at least not as you understand it. We are much more than one individual conscience. We are much more than a single individual. We have been allowed to spread for too long. I just noticed that it says monster.
Monster, yeah.
The name. Yeah. Our host was once a human, but we have long since consumed her body. There are pieces of her consciousness left, of course. But she has become so deeply entwined within us that it's hard to differentiate her from the rest of us. We're all one and the same.
Your host.
That's right. She was a girl. An ordinary girl. Just like you. The Delaney girl. Oh my
It's
god.
the Delaney girl, yeah.
Yeah. We met her in the woods a few years ago, and she took to us at once. She opened up to us and told us all about all of her secrets. She gave us every last little bit of herself and her soul. And then I devoured her.
A girl. Ethel gasped. Are you talking about the Delaney girl?
Delaney?
The monster frowned. There was a pause, and then...
Oh, yes, that was her last name. Delaney. We knew her as Isolde, though. Isolde.
Isolde? I'm not sure.
We knew her as Isolde, though. She really was a sweet thing. So kind and trusting. She used to teleport, and she loved singing. She had the loveliest voice, as you should know full well. We did try to make the most of it before her vocal cords began to deteriorate. We loved talking with her. All she ever wanted was a friend. She told us that nobody would remember her if she disappeared, that nobody would be all upset if she disappeared. She said nobody would remember her name. And she was right. The poor thing. It looks like everybody's forgotten her now, but we haven't. She'll never be alone now. She'll always be part of us. But as for her body...
The monster took a step forth. It juddered as it did, and a few mushrooms which flecked its body peeled away, dropping to the ground like feathers.
It can no longer deal with the strain. I filled her lungs with too many spores, and her brain too. Her heart still beats, though barely. It's a pity. We know that life soul was very attached to her body. But we can't keep using it. There's only so much use we can get out of the host once his body finally begins to break down.
Then you... Ethel trembled. When she inhaled, all she could smell was decay. You're... some sort of fungus?
That's right. We're a fungus. The only one, as far as we know, of our kind.
This at least gave Ethel some sense of relief. She was glad to know that there were not more fungal abominations such as this one. Strange creatures, more intelligent than a fungus ought to be, which lived on in the nervous system of other animals. She didn't like to think of small woodland creatures, squirrels, rabbits, and moles being possessed by a creature like this, their own selfhoods assimilated into an awful, abominable hive mind. It sounded a little like being eaten alive, but it was an act of cannibalism performed not with teeth on flesh, but spores inside the brain itself. It was a cannibalism that worked inside out, hollowing a person or an animal out completely. Eventually, the possessed lost sight of who they were. They became a shell of their former self, if they retained a sense of self at all.
We have lived in this forest for centuries, surviving from one host to another in an endless chain. But that's neither here nor there. We don't think that is very interesting. Our old host has already run her course.
Oh,
Yeah, she can take. I mean, what? What? God, this
Yeah,
is such a nice
yeah,
CG.
I would-
Jeez.
I would give my body to her. I mean, what?
What?
The monster took another step forth and another, mushrooms sloughing off its body with every step. Ethel, meanwhile, took a step back. She could feel her heart in the base of her throat, a cold, hard thing like marble. She would have turned to run if she could, but her body didn't want to listen to her. Her legs had locked up. Taking another step back was the only act of insubordination she felt capable in that moment of offering up, but it still wasn't enough. Ethel felt a resistance behind her, could feel something rough pressing against her spine through the fabric of her clothes. The monster had backed her into a tree. Now there really was nowhere she could run. The monster was upon her, one sinuous arm outstretched, as it took Ethel's cheek, palming it so Ethel gasped. Then, its voice low, it said,
But all is not lost. You're here, and you care for us. You said so yourself. You won't let us die, would you?
I don't...
We know that you wouldn't. You're a good girl, Ethel. A kind girl. You're always putting others before yourself, even when they hurt you. They will say you ought to stand up for yourself more.
Once again, the monster chuckled, a warping of its host's vocal cords which sounded unnatural.
But we think it's best that you don't. We know you want to change, but we like you just the way you are. We like how soft you are, and how sweet. We like that you are so pliant, and we like that you want to be liked so much. It's very endearing. You're a silly thing, but we think you're very, very sweet.
The monster leant in, the wind catching in its dry, dead hair. For a moment, Ethel could see the girl's face anew, could see her dark eyes boring into her, unencumbered by the parasitic fungus which had protruded from her sockets. But then the monster leant in. It parted its lips. As it pressed its mouth against Ethel's own. The monster's breath smelt of mildew. It tasted like a tomb. That was fitting, then, given Ethel's mounting confidence that this would be where she would die. The monster would consume her, just like it had done to Isolde Delaney, to Chloe, who had gone missing all of those years ago, to all of the other girls Ethel knew had vanished deep into Oxbury's woods. Like a parasite, the monster meant to devour her from the inside out, and there was nothing Ethel could do. She was too weak to fight it off. Ethel had always been weak. Ethel had been desperate for any crumbs of affection she could scrounge ever since Clementine had left her. Her parents had tried, Ethel supposed, but her father had always been too busy, her mother too self-absorbed. The love had never been enough to satisfy Ethel. She'd always wanted more. She'd wanted... Had she really wanted this? There was no affection in the monster's kiss. It was instead an act of violence. The monster meant to impress itself upon Ethel, to remake her to its own desires, and there was nothing she could do about it. The monster might not have had a nose, not a real one, but it did have a tongue. Ethel felt its tongue, a diseased lump of a thing rotted away, nudged against her own, and she gagged. She felt like she was going to be sick. Would it repel the monster, she wondered wearily, if she vomited more black sludge inside its mouth? Would it be disgusted enough by her poor conduct to draw away? Would it keep on kissing her? Ethel didn't know, and neither did she want to find out. The kiss was unpleasant enough, rank and footed, without adding the taste of vomit to the equation. Ethel remembered vaguely, as the monster kissed her, the slice of cherry pie she'd eaten earlier. The pie had looked appealing enough, but that was only at a glance. Ethel had known something was wrong the moment she'd put it in her mouth. It had been moldy, flecks of bluish green scattered across the underside of the once immaculate crust, like some sort of illness. The taste of moldy cherry pie wasn't so dissimilar to the taste of the monster's tongue as it twined with Ethel's own. Ethel had been able to spit the ruined pie out of her mouth, but she couldn't do the same with the monster's tongue. She couldn't twist away from it. She didn't have enough strength. It felt, with every kiss, that the monster was draining her further, sapping her of strength bit by bit so her knees began to quake. The monster was kissing her more vigorously than anybody had before, almost as if to draw the breath clean out of her lungs. The monster was kissing her as though its very life depended on it, and perhaps it did. What was a fungus without its host? The monster needed Ethel to survive. That was why it was clinging to her. It needed her more than anybody else ever had. It needed her more than her parents, who had never bothered to understand her. More than her brothers, who had treated Ethel like a stranger. Much, much more than Clementine, who had finished with her, though she'd said that they would always stay together. Clementine had promised, and at the time, Ethel had been naive enough to believe her. If only she hadn't cared so much. If only she hadn't wanted so badly to be wanted. But Ethel didn't have to worry about being wanted now. At least the monster wouldn't leave her. It couldn't. The monster needed Ethel more than she needed it. And nauseating though the monster's kisses were, there was something almost appealing about this idea. Being wanted was nice, even if it would result in her own destruction. Clementine had destroyed her once already, shattering what little self-worth Ethel had possessed. She told Ethel they couldn't stay together, that Ethel had been too depressing to date, that she hadn't loved herself enough. "How am I supposed to love you?" Clementine had shouted. "When you're always so negative, it's such a drag. I've been doing my best, but you're not putting in any effort at all. It's almost like you want to be miserable." "No," Ethel wanted to shout. "That isn't true. I don't want to be miserable. I just want to know that you really love me. I don't want to feel like a burden." That had been Ethel's biggest worry in her relationship with the effortlessly cool, confident Clementine. She'd been afraid of dragging her girlfriend down. Ethel hadn't liked going to clubs, not like Clementine. She hadn't liked drinking, and she'd always stood in a corner awkwardly whenever Clementine had invited her to parties. They simply weren't her thing. Clementine had always pushed Ethel, trying to get her to join in. "You're not gonna have any fun if you don't make any effort, Ethel." But why had it always been on Ethel to make an effort? Why couldn't Clementine ever take her feelings into consideration? No, Ethel thought stubbornly. The ultimate end of their relationship hadn't been her fault, not wholly. Clementine had claimed to love her, but she'd never really listened to her. She'd never really cared. But the girl, the monster, was different. It had at least listened to her. It cared about her enough to try and console her. And even now, it was trying to make Ethel's wishes come true. It was giving her a place to belong. So, what if the monster consumed her? Wasn't that what Ethel had always yearned for? Ethel would rather be subsumed by something that loved her than suffer the pain and the loneliness and the indignity of being abandoned. The monster wouldn't abandon her, though. It couldn't.
Oh my god. So this is the first CG that I ever saw of this game.
Okay, but like
This is really good.
the tentacle thing, whatever, in the tit. Hello?
Wait, I didn't even notice that.
And maybe that was why Ethel relaxed into the monster's hot, intense kiss. Her eyelids fell shut, as though predestined, and as they did, her thoughts began to blend together. Her strength, if she had ever indeed possessed any of it, was beginning to fail her. Her knees felt weak, and her legs were beginning to tremble. If it hadn't been for the tree against which she was pushed, she might have tumbled to the forest floor. It felt as though the girl, the fungus, the creature, as it kissed her, was draining her. Ethel's skin was beginning to feel uncomfortably cold, particularly the tips of her fingers, which were curled against the rough bark against which her body was pressed. The monster's mouth, meanwhile, was warm and wet, its tongue rough against her own. The monster bit down upon Ethel's lower lip, and Ethel gasped. Her vision was beginning to skew. The taste of decay in her mouth was stronger than ever before. It felt like the monster was filling her mouth with dirt. Its kisses didn't feel particularly affectionate. They were far too animalistic. Yes, that's right.
That's you. Whoops.
Oh, whoops. Anyways. Yes, that's right.
The monster spoke in a rasping voice, low and sinister, as Ethel shuddered against it.
Surrender yourself to us. You might as well. Who else would love you after all but us? We are all there is. We are all that's left.
The monster leant in once more to press its mouth, which was more like a maw, against Ethel's neck. There, the monster bit, and there it suckled, its teeth sharp as glass, scraping against Ethel's skin so she squealed. Ethel felt the monster reaching for the hem of her skirt as it spoke. One hand, a dry, hard hand with sunken fingers skinny as sticks, rucked up the long, dun brown fabric which obscured Ethel's pinkish thighs. Then, that same hand was pressed against Ethel's legs. It was against her, stroking insistently. Before, with a pained gasp courtesy of Ethel, one which the monster swallowed with a demanding, destructive kiss, it was inside her. That's crazy! This wasn't the first time Ethel had done this, or had this done to her. She and Clementine had experimented during the year they'd been together. It'd been inevitable during the duration of their relationship and their mutual feelings for one another. Clementine had loved her, and Ethel had loved her in return. They'd kissed, and they'd cuddled, and they'd done more besides. Clementine had stroked Ethel to climax numerous times, Ethel shuddering all the while and sighing, and wondering why Clementine bothered. Why did she like her so much? What did she even see in her? Ethel hadn't known, but she'd wanted to. In her earnest desire to understand and her ever-present insecurity, she'd asked. She'd worried initially that she'd asked too much, but Clementine had assured her that this wasn't the case. She told Ethel that she wasn't annoying. You can't annoy me. It's just not possible. I like you too much. I think you're too cute. That was what Clementine had said in the beginning, but this sentiment of hers hadn't lasted. Welcome in, Titan. Thank you for the $2 ink. Either way, she's finished.
True. True.
True. Ethel sometimes wondered when her continued desire for reassurance had gone from an endearing trait to an infuriating one. What had made Clementine change her mind? Perhaps there hadn't been a clearly defined moment. There often wasn't, not in cases like this. Resentment tended to build up slowly in relationships, bit by bit, like sediment on the ocean floor. It often wasn't possible to know in the midst of it just how bad things had become. Ethel hadn't wanted to annoy Clementine. But it was too late for that. What she wanted didn't matter. Clementine might have worried about Ethel's consent before they did anything approaching the erotic, but she'd not asked for Ethel's consent before they'd broken up. That wasn't a thing that people tended to do before they broke their partners' hearts. Ethel knew she was being unfair and irrational, but she could remember thinking Clementine wasn't all that considerate at the end of their relationship. Clementine liked to posture herself as a good person, but she hadn't realized just how much hurt she caused Ethel. Or maybe she simply hadn't cared. Ethel wasn't sure, but...
You don't have to worry about anything now.
The monster intoned, its mouth against Ethel's ear, its teeth inhumanly sharp like shards of glass.
You're with us. And we want us to stay together. We want to be with you for as long as your body can endure us. Unlike you humans, with your empty promises, we really do mean it. That girl might have abandoned you, but we won't. We can't live without you. We need you, Ethel. So please, give yourself up to us.
Ethel sighed as the monster pressed more kisses against her neck, her throat, her collarbone. The monster's fingers were still moving all the while inside her, stirring her. Ethel could hear the damp, slick sounds of her, and she whimpered from it. This shouldn't have felt so good. There was something wrong about this, something raw and visceral. It had been a long time since anybody had touched her like this, and her own clumsy, ineffectual pawing in the bathtub didn't count. This monster might have been made of fungi, but it was still better at stimulation than Ethel had ever been. Ethel was unsure what that said about her technique. Didn't want to think about it. Could that have been another reason why Clementine had finished with her? Ethel had suspected that Clementine had pretended to orgasm when they were intimate together, to spare Ethel the humiliation of not being able to satisfy her, but... The monster, perhaps knowing what Ethel was thinking, leant in, then brushed the stump of its nigh non-existent nose against Ethel's.
Don't say anything.
But I... wasn't.
Not out loud, perhaps, but I can tell. You're still thinking about her.
What? But how do you...
We know a lot of things.
The monster spoke with a smile, one which looked disarmingly girlish and sweet alongside it.
We know that you have been let down a lot in life. That's why you don't trust us. You can't give yourself up to us. You won't let yourself relax. But you'll be alright. We promise.
Do you really mean that?
Naturally. We aren't lying. We need to take care of you. Unlike that awful girl who broke your heart. We're going to be our new host, so we need to take good care of you. We won't hurt you. That would be like hurting ourselves. We'll fill you up until there isn't any you left to speak of.
That's crazy.
We'll become part of you, and you'll become part of us. And you'll never have to be lonely again.
The monster continued to scatter kisses against Ethel's skin like raindrops. Or was it a her? There was enough of the girl left in its face and its voice that Ethel's wasn't sure. Kisses stung. They were like curses. The kisses soothed. They were like blessings. Ethel's skin, which had always been pinkish as opposed to being stereotypically prettily pale, began to bruise. Ethel's body was coming to life beneath the monster's muddied maw. Ripples of color swirled across Ethel's throat and her neck, her clavicle and her collar. Her skin prickled. Her whole body shook. Then, clusters of fine, white-capped mushrooms began to sprout from the wreckage of Ethel's withering, wasting flesh. Ethel opened her mouth. Did she mean to scream? But was soon silenced. The monster's lips were against her own, their tongues tangled. The monster's breath tasted of compost. It tasted of earth and dirt, and the squirming, writhing insects which lived within it. The monster's kisses left Ethel lightheaded. It felt as though she was being buried alive. Ethel was entombed in the darkness, entrapped, as the monster's kisses continued over and over. Ethel could no longer breathe, so she didn't bother. The girl monster had begun to worm its way inside her, just as she'd promised, their bodies becoming one. Ethel's thoughts blurred together. She didn't know what she was doing nor what was happening, which might have been why she cleaved before the monster's caresses. What was the point in trying to push the monster away? It would have its way with her regardless. It was a fungus. It fed on death and decay, things which humans tended to fear. How could Ethel ever hope to overwhelm a creature like that? She was too much of a human. She was weak and fragile, too scared of death to fight against it. She couldn't avoid it. All she could do was accept it.
Oh, Ethel.
The monster drew back, then caressed Ethel's cheek with one hand, the hand which wasn't between Ethel's legs.
We know you have been struggling for such a long time, but you don't need to struggle anymore. We're here for you. We'll take good care of you. So,
The monster... no, the girl... dozens of girls... exhaled. Ethel felt their breath against her earlobe and she shuddered.
it's alright. Don't fret. I'll be with you. I'll never leave you. Isn't that what you've always wanted?
Was this what Ethel had always wanted? Ethel didn't know. She didn't have the words to express her feelings, but even if she had possessed the words, she wouldn't have been able to speak them. She couldn't talk anymore. Her mouth felt dry, as though it was stopped with cotton wool. She was choking on the air, on the atmosphere, on all of this raw, visceral affection, and she didn't care. If this was what death was, then she would welcome it. It almost seemed silly now, as she succumbed to all of these kisses, that she'd ever been so afraid of this. Why had she always been so worried about death, when she'd always been petrified of being alive? It was life which was difficult. The waking up, the getting dressed, the long grey days of nothingness which stretched on for infinity. It was little she enjoyed in life, and the few things she loved had been bad for her. First had been the violin, then had been the escapism which came with her favorite fantasy novels. Then had been Clementine, but Clementine was gone now. With nobody to love her in her absence, Ethel had drifted. She hadn't known how to fill her dull, grey days, and she'd languished. Being abandoned by Clementine had hurt. It hurt so much. Ethel worried she'd never be able to recover from it. It felt like her heart had been disassembled, as if it were nothing more than a piece of old IKEA furniture. She'd fallen apart. But the girl, who was many girls in one, was putting her back together. These fierce kisses were painful, but that was only in the physical sense, and there was something oddly reassuring about them. It was nice to know that Ethel wasn't the architect of her own downfall. She was innocent and unsullied, a victim in the face of the girl's wicked misdeeds. And there was something soothing about being a victim. Ethel thought she could finally understand why the heroines in old romance novels from the 70s and 80s were such insipid creatures, so weak-willed and wimpy, who were so prone to swooning. Ethel always looked down her nose at such stories. She thought them silly. But now she was beginning to reassess her opinion. She didn't want to be powerful, and neither did she want to be important. Most of the time, she didn't even want to be alive. She would far rather disappear. In that sense, there was something alluring about being a victim. Victims didn't do. They had things done to them. They didn't have to worry. So Ethel let go of her thoughts. They'd only get in the way. She would surrender her mind up to these decaying girls, this immutable monster, just like she'd already surrendered her body. Slowly, they were becoming one. Ethel was the girl, and the girl was Ethel. Ethel no longer knew where she stopped and the girl began. She was being consumed bit by bit, and Ethel no longer cared to fight against her. Perhaps the monster had been right. Perhaps this was what she'd wanted. She didn't want to be loved after Clementine had left her, not necessarily. She didn't think she deserved it. She never thought that she deserved it. Wasn't that why Clementine had left her to begin with? Instead, she wanted to be obliterated. She wanted to cease to be. And if this girl monster was willing to do that for her, wasn't that the same as loving her?
That's right. You're doing so well.
A litany of girls murmured, a symphony of overlapping voices, as their fingers rubbed against Ethel, rubbing inside her.
Just a little more. Let's keep going. We'll make you feel
so good.
We'll make you feel so good you forget everything. When we are through with you, you won't remember all of your regrets. You won't remember your mistakes. You won't need to. We'll do the remembering for you. Which means we'll do all of the hurting for you too. You'll never have to feel pain again. We'll take it all away. We'll become one. And then we'll always be together.
Yes, Ethel thought, with a breathy gasp. These girls would take everything away. They would take her history, assume her face. They would inhabit her body, spores filling her lungs, her head, and her heart. They would live Ethel's life for her, and Ethel would... She would... She would disappear. She didn't want to live anymore. She hadn't wanted to live in a while. Why not submit herself to these girls? A collective consciousness would probably do a better job of being Ethel than Ethel herself ever had. Ethel's back arched. Her body seemed to fall apart, to bust, to bloom, to blossom anew. Her heart hammered. Then her mind contracted. It collapsed, and everything fell apart.
Yes! Oh god! Peak.
Oh my god, Ren, I love when it started saying the girls, you started voicing it with me. That was awesome. That was so good! Oh my god!
I was hoping you would like pick up on it, but I was like, ugh, oh my god. I was thinking about it and I was like, I gotta.
No, it was so good. I'm sad I got like stuck there for a moment, but whatever.
Oh, who cares? It's whatever.
Oh, yeah, who cares? I'll leave.
Great improvisation. Thank you. Just in time for the ending. Toxic Yuri relationship goals. Yes. We get to see
God.
new Ethel. I want to see it.
Oh my god, please.
Oh.
Ethel Briggs was no longer Ethel Briggs. In the deep, dark woods, where few in Oxbury dared to tread, a curious transformation had taken place. The girl, who'd really been a collection of girls, or perhaps they'd been a monster, had taken Ethel inside them. Or perhaps it was Ethel who had taken all of these girls inside her. It was impossible to tell. One thing was certain, however. Where there had once been two, there was now one. The discarded shell of the monster's former host, the dark-haired, dark-eyed Isolde Delaney, lay strewn upon the forest floor, like a pile of unwanted kindling. Isolde's body no longer looked like Isolde's body. It had undergone a curious sort of metamorphosis once it had been abandoned. The discarded carcass lay, curled up, like a shed chrysalis, a cocoon. Mushrooms had begun to sprout from her remnants, pushing upwards like sunflowers, as if to greet the moon which hung above the treetops. As for Ethel, meanwhile, her body too was beginning to change. Her skin rippled as she took the monster and its many, many consciousnesses inside her. A flood of voices filled her head, a torrent of girls past who had been similarly subsumed. Ethel thought, perhaps, that she could hear the dulcet tones of Isolde Delaney, who had been such a good singer. But surely that was impossible. Ethel never heard Isolde speak. Not the real Isolde, at least. She'd only heard a phantom of her, animated by the shared consciousness of the creature which now dwelt within her. Ethel had never known the real Isolde. But perhaps the real Isolde, whatever that entailed, existed still. Within the monster, the creature, the mess of girls and souls all tangled together. Was the monster really a girl? Ethel wasn't sure. Yet she felt she'd shed her own girlhood somehow, in allowing the monster to subsume her. It wasn't just the monster which Ethel had taken inside her. She had taken what remained of Isolde too, and Chloe, and Lucy, and Susan, and all of the other girls who had gone missing in Oxbury in the past. They were still alive, though their hearts no longer beat. Their consciousnesses entwined with that of their hosts. They'd become something more than themselves. And, in shedding their own bodies, they had been permitted to live on for perpetuity, just like a fungus. Ethel, too, had shed her sense of self, just as the monster had discarded the mushroom-riddled carcass of the dearly departed Isolde. Ethel's body was no longer her own, but by the same token, it felt more like hers than it had ever done before. Perhaps there was no Ethel anymore. Her very being was being buffeted, her fragile sense of self tossed to and fro like a ship out at sea. But Ethel felt no particular loss at this. She felt no grief. She wasn't sad. Why should she be? She'd finally found somewhere she belonged. She was no longer a she in the singular, was no longer a sad, lonely individual. She was... No, they were legion. They would always be together. And, as the body which had once been Ethel rippled and distorted, as it took in more voices and existences and consciousnesses than it had ever before possessed, its lips curved into a smile.
Oh! Oh!
There, see? Isn't this what you wanted? The monster crooned to Ethel in her voice. Or perhaps Ethel was simply speaking to herself, deep within the woods, where the fronds of the moon's light struggled to reach.
God, this looks so
Smash.
incredible.
Yeah, I don't care, Smash.
We told you it wouldn't hurt. It isn't even like going to sleep. It's like being reborn.
Those hips don't die.
Oh my god.
God, I'm
Okay.
such a monster fucker.
This was wonderful. I loved this. I'm sorry. I love these designs so much.
God, it's so fucking good.
Addendum. What's that?
What the fuck is addendum? Oh,
More dialogue, everybody.
let's go!
Let's go. Oh jeez, hold on. Let me drink some water.
Alright.
Post-credit scene? There's so much. I know. Ebby's feeding us good with this one.
No, literally.
Ethel was drifting. Her consciousness was coming undone, slowly unspooling around her like silk. She blinked, yet she couldn't see anything. She tried to strain her ears, but she couldn't hear anything. She was trapped in the darkness, sinking deeper and deeper and deeper. It felt as though she were falling through an endless abyss. She tried to scream, yet she couldn't even make her mouth move. Wasn't even sure as she drifted whether she even had a mouth. She wasn't sure who she was, where she was. What was going on? She glanced about her surroundings with sightless eyes, her mouth unmoving, her pale fingers motionless. Her memories felt very fragmented, just like the crazy images conjured up by a kaleidoscope. She still retained vestiges of memories, however, faint, fleeting moments which shone in her mind's eye like broken glass. She could remember tramping through the forest, depressing the tall grass beneath her soles. She could remember her heart thudding in the base of her throat, could remember the boughs of the trees creaking mournfully about her in the cold wind. She remembered reaching St. Catherine's, then looking about with wide eyes, searching for her mysterious confidant. She'd been looking for the girl. Yes, Ethel could remember her now. She could recall her short, dark hair cut into a bob, her pale green summer dress, which had seemed an oddly flimsy thing to wear when wandering about the woods in the dark. She remembered how the girl had looked at her, how she'd held her. She remembered how the girl had kissed her. It felt good, Ethel could recall, cleaving to the girl's kisses, giving herself up to her insistent mouth. She let the girl lead her deep into the forest, and then, Ethel's thoughts became very jumbled indeed. She had vague recollections of the girl being more than a girl, of the girl being some sort of monster. She'd pushed Ethel against a tree, and then... What had happened then? Why couldn't she remember? Ethel strained her mind, if indeed her mind still belonged to her, as she struggled, fighting against her mounting fatigue to remember. She tried to penetrate the thick, soupy fog which had filled her brain, tried to recall what in the world had happened to her, and yet...
Ooh?
Maybe it's me?
Maybe?
You know, I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Ethel gasped. Finally, she could open her mouth, could make noise too. She snapped her head upwards, her eyes wide. Before, she'd been drifting in the darkness, lost like an old folk tale to the inevitable shifting of time. But now, her vision had been flooded with a bright, almost unforgiving light. She was no longer drifting in the darkness, and neither was she alone.
Oh my god!
There was a girl with her, hovering with her in the air. She wore a white sundress, just as Ethel imagined an angel might wear. So white and pure, she seemed to blend into her surroundings. It was a nice EG.
Oh, pretty.
The girl's skin was very pale, but her hair was dark, cropped about her chin in a bob with Ethel remembered. She looked very much like the girl, the one Ethel had first met in St. Catherine's. She was the spitting image of her, in fact. They looked so alike it was uncanny. But unlike the girl, this fairy-like apparition, had blue eyes. The girl reached out, a small smile upon her lips. She found Ethel's hand, her fingers skimming the back of her knuckles, and the moment she did, Ethel started. A flash of recognition sparked within her brain. She knew this girl. She felt almost intimately familiar with her, in fact, even more so than she'd been with Clementine. It felt as though they were soulmates, two halves of the same whole. This should, of course, have been impossible. If Jude had been there to hear his daughter's thoughts, he would have chided her. Jude didn't believe in wishy-washy things like soulmates. He didn't seem to believe in the concept of love in general. Although, despite his cynicism, he never failed to buy Lauren presents for Valentine's Day and for her birthday and for their anniversary. Jude has spoiled his wife much more than he'd ever spoiled Ethel. So much for not believing in love, then. Jude was probably a hypocrite, but that was nothing to castigate him for. Most people were. Ethel was a hypocrite too. She'd always wanted to be loved, but she'd been too afraid to reach out to other people, to make herself vulnerable. Perhaps she hadn't been open enough with Clementine. She hadn't made enough of an effort. Their relationship had died, and Ethel had died alongside it. But it felt like this part of her, this delicate, fragile part which she'd feared Clementine had broken, was being healed. This girl with the dark hair was soothing her. Her touch alone was like magic, and Ethel knew at once, as the girl's fingers squeezed about her, who she was. She knew how old she was, where she'd been born, who her parents were, who her grandparents were too. She knew everything about her. A flood of information filled her, a veritable deluge of it. Ethel blinked and said, "Isolde?"
That's right. I'm Isolde. And you're Ethel, aren't you?
Yes, I'm Ethel. But how do you know that?
How do you think?
Isolde rejoined, dimples appearing in her cheeks.
I know it's the same way you do, silly. I know everything about you. That's because we're the same person, you and I. Don't you see? We've become one, so you don't need to think about your old life. You don't need to fuss about it. All of that is in the past.
The past. Ethel frowned. Could it be true? Could her stress about her thesis, her heartbreak over the breakup, her worries that nobody understood her and that she'd die all alone, be a thing of the past? It seemed too good to be true. Was this some sort of dream? Ethel blinked, but the girl before her did not disappear. Isolde Delaney was still there, in that pale white dress of hers, shining just like the moon's light. She was smiling. Isolde had gone missing from Oxbury almost 3 years prior. She'd wandered into the woods, or so sources said, and she'd never been found. Her disappearance remained a mystery even till this day. But it was no longer a mystery to Ethel. She knew where Isolde was. She'd found her, but she was somewhere ordinary humans could not visit. She was drifting, like Ethel, as if in a dream. Perhaps they could no longer interact with the outside world, not as they once had. But did that really matter? Ethel was still alive, and so was Isolde. They were together, and they weren't the only ones. There were other girls too, drifting inside this strange, white world where no natural light could reach.
Holy.
Ethel could see these girls now, could see them flocking about her, their white dresses fluttering, like curious pigeons in the park. She knew all of their names, though she'd never seen them before. She knew all about them too, knew of their past fears and their regrets and their deepest dreams. The girl with the blonde hair was Chloe, and the girl with the pigtails was Lucy. The girl with the long straight hair was Susan, and the redhead with all the freckles, she was Dawn. There were so many girls drifting about in this pure white world. Ethel struggled to count them all, not that she needed to. She knew who they were instinctively, just as they knew her. They crowded about her, all of them smiling, all overjoyed to see her.
Alright.
Here, you go for it.
It's nice to meet you, Ethel.
Isn't that a bit of an old-fashioned name?
It's just alternate.
I thought mine was bad.
Yours is bad. You have no right to make fun of Ethel.
And who said I was making fun of her? I was just stating a fact.
Alright, let's not argue.
That's right, there's no point. We'll just be arguing with ourselves.
Speak for yourself. I still remember who I am, even if you all don't. But I guess this isn't so bad, really.
Oh, Lucy, you always have to be so contrarian. Please. You, please. Free me. Ashley's not going to Yuri heaven.
Come on, you do it!
Ugh. I think she just likes being difficult.
She did give her host the most trouble, didn't she?
She tried to resist, but it don't work out in the end. Well, of course it did. That's how it always is. It's how it should be too. Don't you see, Ethel?
Isolde looked back at Ethel. She smiled at her, their fingers intertwined. Then, her palms pressed flesh against Ethel's own, she said,
This is what it means to be happy.
Happy. Ethel repeated, her voice little more than a murmur. Was she happy? She wasn't sure. But she couldn't deny she was a good deal happier like this, surrounded by all of these girls, than she'd been with Clementine. Clementine's love had once been enough to sustain Ethel, but now it seemed woefully inadequate, almost laughably so. Clementine had just been one girl, after all. She'd only been able to love Ethel so much. Her love had been finite. She'd promised they'd stay together, but she'd gone back on her word. Her love had run out. But here, in this white world, Ethel knew she'd never need to worry about that. She was these girls. Isolde and Lucy and Susan and Chloe and Ermengarde and Heather and Dawn and Ashley. And they were her. They couldn't survive without each other. Their thoughts twined together like a braid. It was impossible to say, really, where Ethel's thoughts ended and their own began. Their thoughts ran together like oil pastels. Their thoughts and feelings were as one, their hearts beating in perfect harmony. They were not disparate girls, isolated by their own biology, their immutable, inviolable bodies. They'd come together in a way that nobody could, not even the most devoted of lovers. They would, like the girl had said, always be together. Not several girls, but one girl. They were one being. Maybe this was what she'd always wanted after all. Nobody'd ever be able to get tired of her now, not like Clementine had. She had finally found a place where she belonged. Yippee!
Yippee! Gallery. Wahoo!
Alright, so we have the full gallery.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Alright, notes time!
It's time for it.
Time for Evie notes. Very long this time as
Oh
usual.
my god.
Hello everyone, and thank you for reading Her Love Like Poison! I hope you enjoyed your time with it, or at least you found it interesting. Like always, I'll write a few notes explaining where I got the idea for this little story, and some tidbits about the development process. So, actually I had the germ of the idea for this story a really long time ago. Like Cage of Roses, it's another vague idea I've had floating around in the back of my head for years. My first concept for this story, however, was pretty different from what I actually ended up writing. This is a bit convoluted, but I was inspired to write a story with a cute fungus girl after spending the night in a friend's dorm room back in university and seeing the absolutely rank state of their shower. This friend had, well, I guess they still have, OCD, and it led to them not cleaning their shower properly when the tiles started to get moldy because they didn't want to risk catching the mold. I had the conversation with my friend to the extent of, why don't you clean your shower? I can't clean my shower, my OCD won't let me go near the mold. You're just gonna leave it like that? Yeah, I guess. And well, it got me thinking. So, I thought it'd be fun to write a moige, aka a generic boy or girl VN, for the MC as OCD, which prevents him from cleaning his shower. He's staying at home in a small English countryside village while his parents are on holiday, and he's meant to be working on his thesis. Alright, this is starting to sound a little more like Her Love Like Poison. So, his parents aren't around to help him clean the shower. The MC keeps putting his problem off, while the mold in the shower gets more and more out of hand, until, inevitably, well, this was going to be a cute boy-girl VN. The colony of mold gains sentience, becomes a cute anime girl, and then the MC starts to fall for her. He really can't clean up his shower now, because if he does that, his mold waifu would die! Oh no!
Oh
I also had a couple other girls slated for this very serious story. There was going to be a mushroom girl dwelling deep in the forest called Elspeth, and I was going to give the MC a childhood friend who lives in his village who sings in a choir at the local church called Susie, and I was pretty hype about it. I even wrote a little bit of it. But this story never progressed too far and I wound up scrapping it. While I was conceptualizing this boy-girl story, I got pretty into writing Yuri, so I wound up pivoting away from het romance to write things like strawberry vinegar and blackberry honey instead. Holy shit, that's a long time ago. Blackberry honey came out in like 2018. I still like the general idea, however, and I wanted to do something with it. I sat on the idea for a bit until I happened to read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I won't go into any detailed spoilers for this story, but it does have sentient fungus people in it, which reminded me of this old idea I once had. I started to think about reviving the story and giving it a slightly more horror-ish bent, as opposed to the cutesy, comedic, romantic tone I'd originally been aiming for. What if I made my mushroom girl a mysterious, ominous sort of entity who dwells in the woods and, like a siren, tries to seduce young girls from the village? You can tell I'm getting a bit tired. So she can colonize their bodies. We're almost there. So she can colonize their bodies with her fungal spores and assimilate their consciousness. That seemed like a fun idea, so I started to write her love like poison. I also happened to read What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher around this time, which has a similar premise, so I probably took some inspiration from that too. I decided to lean more into the spooky atmosphere, and I had a lot of fun describing the dry, dead woods and Ethel's general sense of mounting unease. Leaning into the horror aspect meant I could do some pretty descriptive writing a la It Gets So Lonely here. I wrote her love like poison about a month after writing Lonely, since I was in the mood to write more spooky stories set in the woods, and it meant I could make the story more